Hello, hello. What's up, everybody? Good to be back. Been a couple of days. Don't say Unk Alert. don't say Unk Alert. Come on, man. What's up, everybody? I'm sorry you had to play Desires. Yeah, it had to be done. I tried my hardest to convince Ka to not play Desires, but couldn't do it. Could not do it. But thank you for the 30 months. Welcome back. All right, well, assemble everybody. We've got a whole lot of stuff to talk about because we have, of course, had 3 big YCSs over the course of the weekend, so we can talk about that. Not gonna lie, when I saw Desires, I was like, okay, this is a one-off for sure. Dude, I thought about that. There was a point in time in testing when there was one Desires as like the 40th card in the deck when I was only doing 1 Rose. It was like, yeah. Yeah, it was a one-off at some point. But yeah. Zelqua, him 72. Thank you for the 3 months. Welcome back. Loimas, thank you for the 26 as well. Appreciate you guys. Thank you, thank you. Why were there no fire dragons in your Sky Striker deck? Yeah, I don't know. Why does everyone call you Unk? Aren't you only like 30? Thank you. Yes, I am 30. Good point, actually. I don't know why. Apparently 30 is almost dead at this point in the internet. But yeah. Blue Cyclone, thank you for the 9 months. Welcome back. All right, gamers, let's do some warm up. Then we've got some stuff to cover, and then we'll talk about everything. All right, I'll give you a more detailed tournament report. We can go over my rounds from the YCS. We can talk about the deck list a little bit because people did have some questions under the deck profile, and I figured we might as well talk about it live on stream. Like stuff like siding patterns and so on and so forth. So we can talk about the deck list a little bit more later. We have other YCSs, of course, to take a look at. We can take a look at the results from Richmond and the one in Mexico. Talk about the format a little bit. We also have to talk about Malice at some point, apparently, because that deck's still around. But yeah, we'll get to all that. Let's quickly warm up so that everyone has some time to assemble, and then we will get started. Can we talk about VS? I also think VS overperformed, at least from my personal perspective. I mean, I did rate the deck highly, and I was aware that it was a viable option, but I didn't expect it to win 2 of the 3 tournaments and also get to the finals in all 3. So yeah, we will talk about that. All right, let's go. Let's guess some cards. Or let's skip some cards. Prominence. Ooh, this is the spirit, the revive. It's a trap that revives like soul resurrection. Yeah. It revives vanillas, I think. It's not a for hire monster. Oh, this is Dark World. This is Snow. This is looking like a Fire Fist. But what is that? What kind of? I can't see the animal yet. That's usually what gives it away. Oh, the rhino. Is there a rhino? There's a rhino. Oh, okay. You feel familiar. That is UA Stadium. Yeah. I'll be on the Shrouded. Raging. No idea. I've seen it, but I don't know what it's called. Quiet Life. That is one of the two Six Samurais that loop together. The blue and the red one. Shinai. The blue one? Well, obviously it was the blue one. I saw that. I had to think of the name. This is a hero. Hero Core? Elemental Hero Core? No. Hero Chaos? Contrast Hero Chaos, yeah. Ooh, that's Iados. I feel like Howling. No, I don't know what it's called. We had it recently. Howl of the Wild. Okay, I was on the right track at least. You feel familiar. This is the ritual for Zera the Mant. Zera ritual? Nice. Okay. Sky, air. No. I'm gonna be pissed. Sky Star Ray. Ah. Altergeist. I think. But I don't know which one. Oh, it's not. Okay, good thing I didn't try. Wind Witch Crystal Bell. This is the... Oh, it's not roulette. It's the Speedroid card, right? The Speedroid... Is it Speedroid Wheel? Yeah. This is Domain. This is battery stuff, but I don't think it's one of the monsters, so I'm skipping it. Electromagnetic Shield. No idea. Ooh, this feels familiar. Robotic Knight. That's the vanilla. I don't remember why someone played it, but I remember someone played it in Primite in Master Duel. I forgot what the reason for it was. Do I know you? I don't think so. No. Okay, some tough ones. What is this? Shrine of Mist Valley. This is the broken Genix controller. I think. Spear. Genix Spear? Yeah. Wait, is Scrap Dragon? Does Scrap Dragon have that much red on it? No. No. Scrap Lube? Okay. I was like, yeah, something felt off with Scrap Dragon because it didn't have that color. This is Samsara Dragon. This is Magician. The little one, Noble Dragon. Noble Dragon? Yeah. Oh, there was no space. Puppet Master. Mystical Puppeteer. Mystic Puppeteer. Dude, it's something puppet. Mysterious Puppeteer, not mystic. This is Neo Bubbleman. That's a Gizmek. Gizmek Uka. This is Pero This is Dark Knight Parshath. That's Treeborn Frog. Ah, dude, I needed no zoom for that. My guy. That is Fairy Tale Snow. That is Stygian Sergeant. Nope. Stygian Security. Gravekeeper's Watcher. Oh, the elemental turtle. What is it called? I have no idea. I don't know what it's called. Radiant Spirit. Never seen that card. Fujin. It's not Yamato, I don't think. It is Arasuda, yes. Mystical Elf. 88, thank you for the bits. Appreciate you. Yeah, Dark Magician support. No idea. Dark Magic Twin Burst. That's Veil of Darkness. Blackstone of Legend? No. Oh, Leonite. Right. That's also a crystal thingy. Lyrilusk. But is this a spell? That's the Sanctuary, right? Lyrilusk Sanctuary, like Bird Sanctuary. Yeah. This is End of the World. Thank you, Maestro Celine. You also Bacon9, thank you for the 25 months. And Rickaloden, thank you for the 5. Welcome back. Appreciate you guys. That's a worm. Isn't it? Yeah, that's a worm. W. Worm Warlord. Okay. Snowbell? Is that just Gem Knight Fusion? No, right? Pyroxene Fusion? No, I'll skip. It is just Gem Knight Fusion, damn it. Is that you? Yeah. Oh, give me Puppet Nightmare. Love that card. Happy it was made. This feels familiar. Toon World. Oh, dude. Okay, that started at the worst possible cutout. If it starts anywhere else, I get that. No problem. This is a Gem Knight as well. That Topaz? No. Citrine. Right. That is Nobleman of Crossout. Wind Up Knight. Got another Gravekeeper here. I think. Yeah. Wait, that's Watcher again. I would take those. Ice Barrier stuff, no idea. Magic Triangle. I feel like I've seen this card before. Block. Oh, that's the link too. Yeah, I've seen it. How do you spell geyser? Pillower? Oh. I thought this is like Phantasm Spiral. No, it's not Phantasm Spiral, but oh, it is Phantasm Spiral. Okay, never mind. I'm tripping. Incantation Candle. This is something Phantom. But the problem is, I don't know. Sectarian of Secrets. Okay, it was not Phantom. All right, we're not getting over 800 this time. 800 to 824. We're not getting to 900. Yep, it's all right. It's not bad. It's not bad. All right, let's get a quick one on this, and then we can get started. All right, we're looking for an old card, low-level effect monster, lower than 15, and before 2015. Okay, so what about, let's do a level 2 so we know exactly what the level is. Trying to think, level 2. Okay, you know what? Let's do Maxi. Okay, it is an Earth level 1. It's an Earth level 1 from 2012 through 2014. Okay. It is not a tuner. And it's got more than 500 attack and very low defense. A level 1 Earth. A level 1 Earth 2012 to 2014. What are some Earth archetypes from around that time? We've got technically Naturia, X-Saber. But X-Saber, I don't know. X-Saber does have level 1s, but most of them are actually even older. 2009. Curry Bandit. Curry Bandit is an amazing guess because it fits basically none of the requirements. That's awesome that you said that. Because it's not Earth, it's not level 1. I guess the rest would fit, but Gookie Guts? No, Gookie is not from before 2015. Wind Up Honeybee? Honeybee. Too small. I think that's the other problem that I have. All the level 1s I can think of don't have more than 500 attack. That's the biggest problem for me right now. I can think of level 1 Earths, but they're all more than they're all like no attack. Soulhorn? No, 0 attack. Royal Rhino? Bro, that's literally from 2024. Gem Knight Lazuli? Alright. See, I would have thought this card had like no attack as well. I didn't know this card had 600 attack. I've seen this card being played before. They played it in like 2015. So this one was actually guessable. But I didn't know this had 600 attack. Oh, yeah, okay. Warm up, more or less successful, but who cares? We have a YCS to recap in a second, but before we do, I want to quickly cover something that was announced over the course of, I don't even know, it was the weekend. I think it was like Friday or Thursday they announced it, but I haven't been streaming since. But I think it's a pretty cool thing that happened. And that is the announcement of the next core booster set in Chaos Origins. Which is the next core booster set after Blazing Dominion, which Blazing Dominion just came out in the OCG and is set to release in the TCG in like 2 months or something. And so not only do we have a couple of new cards to take a look at from this set, but I also want to mention that I really like the direction that this is going. Because as you can tell from the pack artwork, they are kind of like returning, and I guess this is also the reason why it's called Origins. They're returning to a very, very old thing that they used to do, which is this sort of like pack layout with like Yugi and one of the monsters on the front of the pack, which is, as a certified Unk, I still remember very fondly of like all of the DM era booster packs, which had this exact like style. You know, you look at the first couple of boosters, it's always like Yugi on them. And then, of course, eventually they stopped doing that with GX. But I think it's pretty cool. And I do think that this is a good thing for Yu-Gi-Oh! In general. One of the main things that I've been talking about recently, or in recent months and years at least, it's also not just me. It's like a very popular topic in the Yu-Gi-Oh! Community, is like the collector's side of Yu-Gi-Oh! Has been struggling a little bit, and at the moment, one of the main goals I feel like for Yu-Gi-Oh! In the current time is to make it more collectible and more like just attractive to all kinds of people, not just the people that play. Which Yu-Gi-Oh! Is very awesome right now if you're playing it, but you know, we needed more collectible stuff like the full arts that we're getting, and now we're also getting a little bit more focus on some of the real OGs, nostalgic anime characters, and I think that's good. So let's take a quick look at the first couple of things that we know from Chaos Origins. And as we can already see, this is what I'm talking about. This is the kind of stuff that'll be collectible, you know? It doesn't even matter if these cards are good or not, you know? But if you release cards that look like this, people want them, you know? We're gonna have a retrain of the Black Magician of Chaos and the Blackluster Soldier Ritual. And these artworks are awesome. They don't even have to be good, but we're still gonna find out whether they're good or not. But stuff like this is awesome for the collectability of the game. So I'm already kind of excited about this kind of stuff. So we have a whole batch of new cards. We've got Black Chaos, the Ultimate Magical Swordsman is the first card we're gonna take a look at, which is a Dark Spellcaster level 8. Cannot be normal summoned or set, must be special summoned from your hand by shuffling a spellcaster or warrior ritual monster from your hand or graveyard into the deck. You can only special summon Black Chaos, the Ultimate Magical Swordsman, once per turn this way. You can discard this card, place one continuous trap that mentions Ritual of Light and Darkness from your deck or graveyard on your face-up field, which I believe is also a new card. At least if it already exists, I'm not aware of it. So I think this is an entirely new archetype, essentially, around like Dark Magician of Chaos and maybe Black Luster Soldier, which is cool. Basically Maiden of White too. The continuous trap thing gives me the vibe that they are trying to do like a similar concept to, you know, Dark Magician has True Light. No, Dark Magician has, what is it called? Eternal Soul? Blue Eyes has True Light. And then Dark Magician of Chaos and Black Luster get their own trap. Okay. So discard to place the trap. Unaffected by your opponent's activate card effects while you have a ritual spell in your grave. And once per turn, you can banish 2 cards your opponent controls. Okay, so it's a decent start. If the deck is good, you would definitely play this card in it because it gets you access to the trap. And if you already have the trap, then you can summon it. And it's a decent card, especially going second. You know, it's fine. Nothing too crazy, but it's fine. Skull Archfiend of Chaos, which is a Summon Skull retrain, which is awesome. Level 6 Dark Fiend. You can only use the first and second effect of this card's name each once per turn. If this card is in your hand or grave, you can target 3 cards in the graveyard and or face up banishment, including a card that mentions Ritual of Light and Darkness other than Skull Archfiend of Chaos. Place them on the bottom of the deck in any order, and if you do, special summon this card. If this card is sent to the grave, you can send a ritual spell from your hand or deck to the grave. Add 1 ritual monster mentioned on it from your deck to your hand. Okay. That is interesting. That has a lot of interesting applications. Maybe even outside of a dedicated Ritual of Light and Darkness deck. Because it's technically a generic ritual searcher. If you have a way to send it to the graveyard, you know, like you can search Habakiri with Armageddon Knight, I guess. You can go normal summon Armageddon Knight, send Skull Archfiend of Chaos, and then send Mitsurugi Mirror, and then add Habakiri from your deck to your hand. Now, why are you summoning Armageddon Knight instead of just summoning Manju? I don't know. Don't ask me that question. Probably not. It's not something you're going to use it for, but I'm just saying, like, oh yeah, Aerial Eater, I guess. Aerial Eater, Fiendsmith combo, you just Aerial Eater, send it, and then you can search Habakiri. Awesome. No. It's an interesting card. I think it's gonna be a little wacky to draw it, unless the deck has great ways to discard it. Because, of course, it is a level 6, so getting it into the graveyard is not trivial. The graveyard effect is very nice for recursion, and can also interrupt your opponent's graveyard a little bit. It is not a quick effect, so you can't like chain it when they're trying to revive something. But in the modern game, there's a lot of times where your opponent is going to have certain cards in the graveyard that are going to provide value later on. Like if they go Fallen and the Virtuous and send an Albion, you can put that back into the deck. If they have an Urgula waiting in the graveyard to return something next turn, you can put that back. You can disrupt stuff like Ecclesia or Cartesia as well. So there's a lot of applications for this card. Oh yeah, it's okay. I think if it was level 4, it'd be pretty insane. But yeah, Mystical Celtic Sage Light. Okay, Celtic Guardian retrain. You can only use the first and second effect of this card's name each once per turn. If this card is normal or special summoned, you can activate this effect. You can only special summon from the extra deck once for the rest of this turn. Also reveal your entire hand. And if there's a card that mentions Ritual of Light and Darkness in it, you can draw 3 cards, then discard 2 cards. Okay. So about discarding this card, huh? You can tribute this card, special or ritual monster that mentions Ritual of Light and Darkness from your hand. Okay, so they put Graceful Charity on a normal summon. I mean, it could also be special summoned, I guess. It is a pretty hard lock, I will say. Like, only one special summon from the extra deck for the rest of this turn is a proper lock. So that's something to consider. And also, of course, you can only do this in a deck that consistently like 2 cards combos with this. This is the restriction of showing your opponent your entire hand and having to have another card that mentions the Ritual of Light and Darkness in it, I think is also something to like to consider. Those are real restrictions. You can't just play this in any deck that doesn't care about the extra deck. Just draw 3, discard 2. You know, you do have to actually play a deck that can consistently reveal a card that mentions the thing. So yeah, it's interesting, but I think it's probably okay. Mitsurugi. I mean, yeah, you could do this in Mitsurugi, but the problem in Mitsurugi is like you need to have another card that mentions the thing, right? So like you'd have to play a proper package in Mitsurugi. It's not like you can just draw this card and resolve it. You do need to draw this card and another Ritual of Light and Darkness card to go with it. And even if you can search this card, that does not mean you're also automatically going to be able to resolve it. So, and I don't even know if it's going to be worth it to jump through all the hoops in other decks, because realistically what you're getting is draw 3, discard 2 at the end of your combo or at some point in your combo, which is like fine, but I don't even know if that's going to be worth it per se, right? It's not like, because would you rather bridge into something like this that locks you into 1 more extra deck summon and draws you 3, discards 2, when you could just make a Dugaris at this point, which is 1 less draw, 1 less discard. And Dugaris is essentially available to every single combo deck and does not require you to reveal your hand and does not require you to have another specific card in your hand to do it. And like Dugaris has also been around for forever. Now you can argue whether you think Dugaris is healthy or not, but realistically, like the Dugaris is a lot easier to set up in other decks than this. So for the most part, you're just going to use this card in this deck. And in this deck, it is really strong, but maybe it's okay because it has proper restrictions, right? Gurifo. I love him. Dark Fiend, Kuribo Retrain. You can only use the first effect of this card's name once per turn. Quick effect, you can discard this card, then activate one of these effects. The next battle or effect damage you would take this turn becomes 0. Set 1 quick play spell or trap that mentions Ritual of Light and Darkness from your deck. It can be activated this turn. For the ritual summon of exactly 1 level 8 monster with a card effect that requires use of a tribute, this card can be used as the entire tribute. Okay. Now, I would guess that 99.9% of the time you would do this. But there is going to be random game states where this can matter. You know, like when you play against this deck, you're going to have to consider if you go for game, you know, will I have to like will I have to play through one of these or not, you know? It does allow you to play turn 0. That's true. I guess that really depends on the quality of the quick play spells of this deck, but that is potentially a hand trap if you can activate it and immediately do something with it. That could be very interesting. We have to keep that in mind. But yeah, okay. Here we have the new Black Chaos, the Dark Chaos Magician. The regular artwork, which is already pretty cool. I gotta admit, this is already a pretty cool looking card. But then you get this one, and it's completely ridiculous how good this looks. Level 8 Dark Spellcaster Ritual, 2800 attack, 2600 defense. You can ritual summon this card with Ritual of Light and Darkness. You can only use the first and third effect of this card's name each once per turn. If this card is special summoned, you can add a spell from your grave to your hand. Okay, that's awesome. That's great flavor, right? That's just the Dark Magician of Chaos effect, but on a ritual monster. It's really powerful, but it's also really cool. I mean, the White Forest Synchro 8 also does this, and it's like, funnily enough, one of the least outrageous things in the White Forest deck is adding one of the spells back to the hand. So I think this is completely fine. But it is cool. Unaffected by your opponent's activated effects unless they target this card. Spells and traps you control cannot be destroyed or banished by your opponent's card effects. You can target one card your opponent controls, banish it face down. Because this third effect is not a quick effect, I would say overall this card is just okay. I would say like this doesn't feel that great. Like, okay, adding a spell from your grave to your hand is a good ability. We have to look at the spells in the archetype. Maybe they have some really good spells that are not once per turn that you can recycle. Maybe that's what makes it really good. The unaffected effect here is pretty fake because if you target this, it is affected. So like it's really easy to out for basically every deck. I can't think of a deck right now that has like really big problems of outing this. Like, yeah, sure, it's unaffected by like Mululu or Dracotail Pan, but then you can just pop it with Gulamel. Like basically every single deck has targeting removal, pretty much, right? Yeah. And then protecting your spell traps, I guess, is neat for stuff like Lightning Storm and whatever. So okay. We have no this is not a quick effect, so it's kind of whatever. The fact that it banishes face down is quite big actually. So if you summon this going second, being able to get rid of a resource forever is pretty solid. So it's not a bad card by any means. Mirror Jade can't out it. Well, you could attempt to just attack it with Mirror Jade because it is 2800. So I think you're gonna be fine. Blackluster Soldier, Soldier of Light and Darkness. Once again, a really cool looking card, even in its regular form, but the full art goes crazy as well. We've got a level 8 Earth Warrior Ritual, of course. You can ritual summon this card with Ritual of Light and Darkness. You can only use the first and third effect of this card's name each once per turn. If this card is special summoned, you can target a card your opponent controls, banish it. Cannot be destroyed by battle, unaffected by your opponent activate its effect, unless they target this card. They probably have targeting protection somewhere. When this card destroys an opponent's monster by battle, you can make it gain 1500 attack, and if you do, it can make a second attack in a row. Okay, this one has even less applications when you're going first. Like this one, at least, you know, adds a spell back and protects your back row. But both of these seem rather mediocre when you're going first, but then they get nice bonuses when going second, which is great, by the way. I think that's a great way to go about it. I love when they do that. I love when they make cards that are like okay, but they just get better when when you go second. I think that's a great way to balance going second in Yu-Gi-Oh in general. There's probably a way to ritual summon this on your opponent's turn to get the banish on your opponent's turn as a disruption, which is fine. I think that is also cool. I mean, a banish on the opponent's turn is nothing too crazy, so I think that's fine. And also this does mean that these are both unaffected by something like Forbidden Droplet, which is one of the more popular breakers or ways you would stop this on your own turn. As well as just like general negation, right? Like if your opponent has, I don't know, it's Master Duel exclusive, but Baron the Fleur, for example, cannot negate these because it doesn't target. So that's neat. Okay, here we have the ritual spell, Ritual of Light and Darkness. You can only use the second effect once per turn. Ritual summon one of these two. Ritual summon a Black Chaos, the Dark Chaos Magician, or Blackluster Soldier, Soldier of Light and Darkness from your hand by attributing monsters from your hand or field and or banishing monsters from your grave whose total level equal or exceed its level. If this card is in your grave, you can add it and one card that mentions Ritual of Light and Darkness from your grave to your hand. Ooh. That's a high quality ritual spell. Because the first part is not once per turn. So you can only recycle it once per turn, but realistically, you still get to do it a bunch of times that way. Just getting it and any card that mentions the ritual back from the grave is really, really strong. Now, to be fair, like, rituals do need this sort of stuff because, of course, the ritual mechanic is very weak, all things considered. So every single ritual deck, if it wants to be playable, needs to have some sort of way to cheat the really negative, like, mechanic of the rituals. So, like, you need this sort of stuff to make these cards even remotely viable. But this is a really high quality ritual spell, even for modern ritual standards. It's not as good as Mitsurugi ritual, I would say, but it is pretty strong. But yeah. One quick clarification: if this is in your grave, you can banish this as the entire tribute, right? This effect also applies while it's in the graveyard. It's like Schmidt from the Necros, right? The same wording. Yeah, okay. Because I remember some cards, like the new Necros need to be on the field, I think, to be the full tribute, but Schmidt, I think, didn't. So I wasn't sure what the wording was. But yeah, for the ritual summon of exactly one, yeah, it counts. Okay, that's neat. Okay, we have Mystic Box Retrain. Oh, I think this is awesome. I think all the retrains of these iconic cards is awesome. All right, Mystic Box of Chaos, quick play spell. When your opponent activates a card or effect that targets another card you control, return one of those cards you control to the hand. If it's set, reveal it. And if you do destroy a card on the field, then you could special a monster that mentions Ritual of Light and Darkness from your hand with a different name from the returned card, ignoring its summoning conditions. If this card is destroyed by your opponent, you can special summon a ritual monster that mentions Ritual of Light and Darkness from your hand or deck. This card is very fun. So the way I interpret this, the way this card is supposed to work, and of course it has more applications, but because both of the ritual monsters are basically unaffected unless you target them, you are forcing your opponent to target them if they want to remove them, unless they can run over them. Of course, that's the other thing. But let's say they're trying to interact with you in the main phase, they're trying to clear your board, they have to target these guys, otherwise they are unaffected. And so the way I interpret this is going first, you summon this guy, which protects your spell traps, so they can't simply like destroy this card first. They have to get rid of this guy first. And then when they target this guy to get rid of it, you activate this card to dodge the targeting. You return this guy back to your hand. You basically tag out the Black Chaos, the Dark Chaos Magician, and you tag in the Black Luster Soldier, Soldier of Light and Darkness from your hand. You get the pop from this card, destroy one card on the field. And then, because you special summon the Black Luster Soldier, you are able to banish a card your opponent controls. So it's a really, really cool interaction, I feel like, between those. And then if you ever don't have the protection from the Black Chaos, the Dark Chaos Magician, and your opponent destroys this, it's kind of like a mini Waking the Dragon as well, right, for this deck, which I think is cool. Yo, Nibiru Token, thank you for the 5 gifties. I appreciate that a lot. Thank you. And Bearded Puck, thank you for the 14 months as well. Okay, this card seems fun. This card seems fun. I like that. Okay, ooh, we got Magical Hats, Chaos Hats on a spell card now. Quick play spell. I wonder how they retrain Magical Hats, because that's such a wacky card with how it works. When your opponent activates a normal spell trap card or a monster effect, choose 3 spell traps with different names from each other from your deck and a monster in your main monster zone that mentions Ritual of Light and Darkness. If you do, special summon the chosen traps as normal monsters whose name is Chaos Hats in face down defense position. Set the chosen monster, shuffle them on the field. Then your opponent's activated effects becomes destroy one opponent's set monster. Dude, this card is awesome. And this card is really funny, but it's good, no? Like this is a good card. Because once again, this is essentially a negate, right? This is a negate because you are changing your opponent's effect. Whatever your opponent's originally trying to do is not happening, right? Your opponent activates Upstart Goblin, you chain this, your opponent does not draw a card. Instead, they destroy one of your set monsters, which is then random because you have 3 spell traps and a monster. And now the thing is, we already have seen one card here, the Mystic Box of Chaos, that I think is good enough for this deck to definitely play. And then this is one card already that you can set that will, if they destroy it, will trigger and do something, right? And here's the thing. You are not limited to spell traps that mention the ritual. You can take any spell traps. I mean, I don't know if you want to play this card, play those cards in this deck, but you can take cards like Waking the Dragon. You can take Transaction Rollback, whatever. You know, if you want to play those cards, maybe you don't want to play those cards. Who knows? Maybe you just play cards that are like better if you draw them. Like, yeah, Black Goat Laughs maybe is a better example. You know, I don't know if you would play cards like Waking the Dragon just for this card, but maybe you would. Who knows? Maybe you would. So you basically negate your opponent's effect, and you also get a couple of spell traps from your deck. You set them, and if your opponent pops them, you might get a benefit out of it. Also, those monsters are not destroyed like with Magical Hats. I think it destroys the cards at the end of the battle phase. With this, they will stay on the field, right? They will stay on the field as level 8 Dark Spellcasters 0/0 normal monsters. Which means you can make all kinds of things with it on the follow-up turn, right? Or yeah. You can do all kinds of things with them. I think you can definitely link with them. I think you can also, yeah, you can overlay them into rank 8. They are normal monsters, and a lot of link monsters require effect monsters, so you can't make everything with them, but it's definitely solid. It's definitely solid stuff you can do with those cards, yeah. This card is good. I think this might be the best card we've read so far. Now, of course, the requirement is you need to already have a monster on the field that mentions the Ritual of Light and Darkness, which means, I mean, there is a couple here, right? You do have a couple monsters, but you do need to get one onto the field before you can use this, but it is a really powerful card. And 3 empty spell trap zones. No, you need 3 empty monster zones. You don't need 3 spell trap zones for this. You need 3 empty monster zones. It's insulation going first for hand traps as well. Yeah, you can dodge stuff like even Ash. You can dodge Ash like you can, if you normal summon this mystical Celtic Sage and your opponent ashes it, you can dodge that with this, right? Okay. I think this is the best card we've read so far. This thing isn't once per turn. This thing doesn't need to be once per turn because after you use one, you have no more space for another one. And you also don't have another face-up monster, probably. Yes, in theory, you're correct, but in practice, I think it's going to be very hard to use more than one. Unless one of them gets negated, then yeah, sure. But yeah, okay. Mind Shuffle, Continuous Trap. You can only use the first effect of this card's name once per turn. You cannot activate this card's first and second effect in the same chain. During either player's turn, you can add a monster that mentions Ritual of Light and Darkness from your deck to your hand, then discard 1 card. Okay. When your opponent activates a card or effect, you can return a level 7 or higher monster you control to the hand. Special 1 monster with a different name from your hand that mentions Ritual of Light and Darkness, ignoring its summoning conditions. I wonder, this is something like, why? Oh, this also says ignoring its summoning condition. Never mind. I thought this one didn't say that and the other one did. Never mind. Okay, so the first thing I'm noticing here is that the little Karibo guy is not actually a disruption on turn 0, right? Because the cards you set with it will not actually do anything, right? Like, yes, you can set the trap and immediately activate it, but that only lets you add a monster, then discard a card. Which, even if you add, you can add like the summon skull and discard it, but then you can just add a ritual monster that doesn't do anything. You can with Harmonia. I mean, okay, all right, sure, yes. It with a lot of luck and a lot of other things going your way, you can pull something off with it. I just mean like on it in itself. In itself, this stuff is not interruption, right? In itself, this just allows you to get into your engine a little bit quicker, which is still good. Don't get me wrong. Like this is still decent. It's just not. It's not something I would consider interruption. So it's okay. Still, it's a good card, but it's not like it's not crazy. The one thing that I don't love about this is that it's once again like surrounding a continuous trap that's going to be awful to draw. It's the same concept with like True Light and Eternal Soul, which is like it's cool because it makes these decks very grindy by nature, because you get this card onto the field and then you activate it over and over and over again. Like this deck feels like it has very good grind game already. But no, the Kuriboh cannot activate it from the hand. And it also cannot it cannot activate it from the graveyard either. So if you like, let's say you draw it and you have the swords, the sage, if you discard it, I don't see a way to get it back. Oh wait, this one places it from the grave. Okay, this one places it from the grave. That makes more sense. Okay, you can discard it. You can discard it and then place it from the graveyard with the ultimate magical swordsman. Yes, that's okay. Yeah, all right. It has some ways to get rid of it if you draw it. You know, you can discard it for the sage and then place it with the swordsman. Okay. And Summon Skull can put it back into the deck. Yes. Okay. Quite frankly, I'm a big fan of this concept. I'm a big fan of this concept so far. It seems very fun to me. I love the idea of, you know, your opponent has to target your stuff to get rid of it, and then you like start dodging the targeting. You start tagging in and out. You start like, okay, they target the Black Chaos Magician. You bounce it back to your hand, summon out the Black Luster Soldier, get a banish. Then your opponent does something else, and then you go like, okay, let me return my Black Luster back to the hand now and special the Chaos Magician again. You know, I think that sort of stuff is awesome. You can't do this infinite amount of times because they are once per turn, but like if you can cycle in and out of these, is really cool. And then like, yeah, you summon this, you get a spell card back from the grave and so on. I think it's kind of awesome. And for the most part, it's working completely without like negations. The only thing that they have is the ability of the Chaos Hats to change one effect, which is powerful and is practically a negation. But for the most part, it operates a lot on resources, banishing, destruction. So I think a lot more healthy interactions than other archetypes. And also proper locks on the most powerful effect, which is draw 3, discard 2. This card is very properly phrased, I think. How would you rate this deck from 1 to Mitsurugi? With just these cards so far, I think it is probably going to lack starters a little bit, because neither of the ritual monsters are like can be considered, you know, starters. What do you have? I mean, you have the Kuriboh, which is a starter. You have the Sage, which is a pretty good starter, I would say, if you draw it alongside another card. The Summon Skull alone doesn't do anything. This one is a starter as well, the Chaos Magician. And you could probably pair it with other things as well. Like you could play Fiendsmith in this, because you can Aerial Eater send the Skull Archfiend or something. Like you can probably do things like that. So maybe there's probably ways to make it consistent. So I don't think it's Mitsurugi power level, quite frankly. I do not think it's Mitsurugi power levels. It's decent. I think it's worth a shot. I think it has a chance to be solid, especially if they go down the route of giving it more support. But it's not Mitsurugi level, I don't think. The Overframe Kuribo can also search the new Kuribo. Also, Souls can recycle the new Dark Magician, kinda. There's probably other synergies, yeah, because it is ultimately a Blackluster Soldier, Dark Magician, or Chaos archetype thingy. There's probably some other synergies that you can use within these cards. You can use pre-prep as well, which makes it a little weird that did they limited pre-prep in the OCG, or did they ban it? I think they limited it, right? They limited, yeah. Kind of weird they limited pre-prep before they released this archetype. But okay. But technically pre-prep is also a really good card in this deck, right? Abakiri's fault? I mean, yeah, but they could have hit other cards, is what I'm saying. But yeah. I think it's cool. I like the theme of it. I'm mostly excited that we're returning to some more classic designs in Yu-Gi-Oh! I think this is going to be very attractive for collectors as well. I think there's going to be a lot of people who are going to go crazy over artworks like this. And I think that is important. And I think whether this deck ends up being tier 1 or not is not even that important. But from what I'm seeing here, I wouldn't be mad if it was a good deck. Like I think it's looking kind of fun. So if they make it meta, I wouldn't be mad about it so far. I'm not seeing anything toxic here. I think got some pretty awesome stuff going on. Cool recursion, cool resource loop, proper locks. I got no issues with that. I think it's cool. All right. This kind of feels like Shining Sarcophagus archetype, but for Yami Yugi. Yeah, I mean, it's not the first time. It's not the first time. It's not the first time that they have done something like this, but I just think the more they do it, the better. And it doesn't always have to be like just straight up Blue Eyes or Dark Magician support. And even like the Shining Sarcophagus stuff was like okay as well. I don't think that was a bad deck either. But I don't know if this is better or worse than Shining Sarcophagus yet. I guess it feels a little better. Well. Red Eyes support when? I always thought it was weird that they never made Red Eyes as good, or even like a little bit better at least. But I guess Red Eyes does have the problem that it's always been very, very strong in like Dragon Link or other Dragon decks in general. But yeah. All right. Let's talk about the 300th YCS. We have a lot of things to go over. And most importantly, I want to give you a little bit of a tournament report. Of course, as I've already posted on YouTube, I have made top 16 with Sky Striker at the YCS. And I have talked already plenty about my deck choice and also the deck profile in general over on my YouTube channel. So if you want more detail on the list in particular, and so on and so forth, you can check that out over there. Today, I want to give you guys a little bit of a tournament report, like how my rounds went. We can talk about it in a little bit more detail, as well as talk about some of the questions that people had on under my YouTube deck profile, like something like people were talking about like, whoa, the side deck patterns and so on and so forth. Like we can talk about it a little bit more. But yes, ultimately, as I already discussed in my video that I posted before the YCS even happened, I was torn between playing Draco Tail, Radiant Typhoon, and Sky Striker, which is something I've been talking about on stream pretty openly as well. I was considering those three decks the most. The deck I wanted to play the most was Sky Striker. I just love this deck's playstyle, man. It's really grindy, a lot of powerful spells. And I figured, you know, if a deck like this is playable, then I should try my best to make it work. And I ultimately decided to give it a shot, and I do not regret it in the slightest, even though, of course, unfortunately not enough to make it into the actual top cut with the top 8. I was still really happy with top 16 with Sky Striker. I think it's something to be proud of, because this deck is, while it's definitely not a bad deck, it's also like it's pretty much a rogue deck right now with all the other decks in the room. But I wanted to give it a shot, and the reason why I thought it could work is because I think this deck has a solid, I think it has a solid Draco Tail matchup. It has a pretty good Radiant Typhoon matchup, and it's also decent into K9 Vanquish Soul. And those were the 3 decks I expected the most, and that's why I wanted to take this opportunity to play this deck, because in every format where the more combo-heavy decks dominate, like decks like Malice or decks like Lunalight, decks like K9 Crystron, if those decks are more popular, then this deck is not a great choice, which those decks were not non-existent, but they were not very popular. Even though Malice did pretty well. We can talk about that later as well. We're going to talk about like why Malice performed so well, which I also did not expect, but even if it performed well, it was not that popular. Like, I played against a single Malice in the tournament, and I beat that one. But other than that, I didn't see that much Malice, even though some people obviously did really well with it. But yeah, you still lost to Draco Tail. Of course, Draco Tail is a good deck. Only because my deck is fine into Draco Tail does not mean I beat every single Draco Tail I played against. It's not like this deck does not farm Draco Tail. It's okay into Draco Tail. You can beat Draco Tail with it pretty well, but if there's a good Draco Tail player who opens a solid hand and has like Ash or Bell in hand, or maybe both, worst case, then yeah, they can beat you. We can go over the tournament report later. I'll tell you exactly what kind of matchups I had and which ones I struggled with and which ones were not so difficult. But I did lose to Draco Tails, yes, absolutely. And we're going to talk about that as well. So yeah, but all things considered, I had a pretty good time at the YCS, and I just wanted to get that out there. I think the Yu-Gi-Oh trading card game is in a very, very good spot at the moment. I think there is a lot of different playstyles represented in the top decks. You see grindier decks like Radiant Typhoon and also Sky Striker doing well. You see like mid-rangey decks like Draco Tail doing really well. You see combo-heavy decks still doing well. You know, we saw Malice in a bunch of top cuts. We saw Yummy, Radiant Typhoon Tri-Brigade win the NA YCS as well, which we're going to talk about in a second. But there's a lot of different things that you can do in Yu-Gi-Oh! At the moment, and it feels like it's relatively balanced between all of those different strategies, and I think that's pretty cool to see. So yeah. We're gonna just go over my tournament real quick, and we can talk about some of the matchups that I had. We're just gonna go by my Twitter thread that I did, just so that it's gonna help me as a little bit of a reminder. So, in round 1, I played against Mitsurugi Orchist. I lost the dice roll there. I went second, and in the first game, I saw they started with the Mitsurugi portion of the deck. I think it was pre-prep. And at that point, I looked at my hand and I was like, okay, you know, Mitsurugi is an okay matchup for this deck. It's not like crazy good, but it's okay. I looked at their combo and I was like, okay, as long as it's pure Mitsurugi, I'm gonna be fine. And then eventually they pivoted into Zombie Vampire, and I was like, oh shit, now shit is going down. And the Zombie Vampire revealed that it was Orchist Mitsurugi, because they hit, I believe it was Harp Horror. And at that point, it became unwinnable for me in game 1, because they ended up, I mean, I still tried, but they opened the full Mitsurugi Orchist board, which means they had, I think, Prayers, Mitsu Trap, Orchist Counter Trap, Orchist Field Spell, Murakumo, IP Masquerena, a lot. And I ended up playing into it, and it ended up being actually winnable until they revealed they also had drawn with Dugaris, Dominus Impulse, and Called by the Grave, which completely destroyed me. So they lost game 1 to Mitsurugi Orchist. and that was tough. And I also, at that point, I thought I was gonna lose the first round, because if they make that board in game 3 again, then I'm gonna definitely lose to it. Game 2, I win going first. My opener was not that good, but their opener was also not that great. Like, it was like I think I got hand trapped. I don't remember what it was. It was either droll, or I think it was imperm on 0, and then I just passed. Something like that. And then but they luckily couldn't play through. It was like Widow Anchor. I Widow Anchored the Girsu. I took it, and then they didn't have Habakiri in hand. And then in game 3, it was them going first and me basically just hoping they wouldn't have both sides of the equation again, like Mitsu and Orchist. So in game 3, I opened, I think it was Ash or Bell. I don't know which of the two it was. I think it was Bell. But I belled pre-prep, hoping they didn't have other Mitsu cards, and they didn't have other Mitsu cards. So all they did was the Orchist board, which was still a challenge. But basically they ended, I think it was the Link 4, Field Spell, Counter Trap, something, and some non-engine, and I was able to push through with that. But I think game 3, if I didn't open Ash or Bell for the pre-prep, I probably would have lost, because they would have had Orchist and Mitsu and everything like game 1, basically. But yeah, which is the nature of this deck, you know, like I don't play as much non-engine to stop people from building a board. So whenever there is a deck that I'm going up against that makes an unbreakable board, I'm losing if I don't draw my few hand traps, which luckily in game 3 I had that Ash and they only had one Mitsu starter. But yeah. So yeah, for game 3 we pretty much played the classic Sky Striker versus Orchist, the classic toss format matchup, which Sky Striker was able to win for me. But yeah. And then round 2 was already the first loss of my tournament, which was kind of annoying. But I won the dice roll against Branded Dracotail, and in game 1, I opened pretty well in game 1, actually. I think it came to a point where I activated 0 to search Engage, and I think they belled it, and I crossed out the bell, which was also the 3rd spell in my grave. So at that point, I failed really nasty, because I was like, okay, now I'm going to engage for 3 spells. But then they also had Ash for the engage, and then that didn't resolve. So my board ended up being like 0 plus Widow Anchor plus something. I think I had, yeah, like I think I had like Lemnis Gate as well or something. And their hand, after having Ash and Bell, was something like Lucius, Pymena, Rahu, Urgula or something, and that cooked me completely. Game 2 I went first. Game 2 I went first, and I got drolled, I think, but I had thrust for different dimension ground, so I punished them pretty hard for the droll, so I won that. But then game 3 they went first, full Sky Striker combo, not Sky Striker, full Dracotail combo, plus Judgment, plus Droll and Lockbird, which my hand in game 3 was actually really strong. But if they didn't have Droll and Judgment, I would have been fine. But because they had both, I got completely destroyed. It was like they opened like all 3 traps and then set one more, so it was 4 sets. And I went normal summon Ray with the plan, like, and my hand was like Ray, Desires, Droplet, Fallen at the Virtue. Like it was a pretty good hand. But my idea was I'm gonna go Ray into 0, immediately 0 tag out into Ray and Rose, because I always side out one Rose going second against Dracotail. So I didn't want to activate Desires and risk banishing it. I wanted to get it out of the deck with 0 first, which is something I do a lot with this deck. But they judgmented the Ray normal summon. And at that point, I already knew it was going to be rough. And then I activated Desires, and they didn't flame it. At which point I was like, okay, they got drolled, don't they? So I drew 2 with Desires, and then they drolled me as well, which was pretty tough. And then I could play into it a little bit, but I ended up losing after the Droll plus the Judgment. If it was one of the two, I think I would have been okay, but because they had both, it was not winnable. Which felt bad, but at the same time it felt okay because I felt like I couldn't have done anything different there, which was okay. But yeah, the round 2 loss to Draco Tail was pretty rough. Then I had Radiant Typhoon, which ultimately I had a pretty good experience against Radiant Typhoon this tournament. I think I played against 3 of them and I beat them all. And I think I only lost 1 game in total. No, I played against 4 Radiant Typhoons, actually, I think. Yeah, 4 Radiant Typhoons and I lost 1 game to Radiant Typhoon. So 8-1 in games versus Radiant Typhoon. Game 1, they had the full opener with Radiant Typhoon, but this deck, I think this deck does pretty well against Radiant Typhoon. So I broke it game 1. And then in game 2 was really weird because they bricked, but I also bricked. So we just like passed back and forth a little bit. But then I drew, I think it was Ray first. And won the game from there. But yeah. Round 4 was Branded Draco Tail again. Which I was able to outgrind in both games. They went first both games because they won the dice roll here as well. At that point, I was already pretty happy I was playing Sky Striker because, as you can see there from my dice rolls, including round 5 as well, I went 1 and 4 in the first 5 rounds in dice rolls. And I think if I had played a different deck, then I would have had a lot more problems going second with those matchups that I had. Because round 2, 3, and 4 was all basically just meta decks, which if those go first, I'm gonna have a really hard time. But yeah, round 5, I thought round 5 was surprising because I played against pure Yummy, like actual pure Yummy. Like they were doing the the what's it called, the Cupid pitch into the White Forest Diabelze Synchro 8, and then like summon Zalen on my turn and stuff like that. We had a really, really long and grindy game 1 because they went first and full comboed basically, and then I grinded through it, which was really fun. It was a really fun matchup because Yummy is like, Yummy without Herald of the Arclight is so interactive. I thought it was really fun to play against them, but it was a really long game 1. One of the biggest problems that I had was that they had Linkuriboh in rotation, and Linkuriboh made my Widow Anchors really awkward. So it was a good back and forth, but ultimately I was able to win it. I remember this is in one of the end phases because it was a really long and grindy turn and back and forth. I forgot to set a Fallen and the Virtuous with Albion, and I almost lost because of it. But luckily, I didn't get punished for it. But I realized as soon as they drew, I was like, nah, I forgot the Fallen and the Virtues. Because the turn was really long. And then they almost had enough follow-up to break through because I didn't have the quick play spell. But yeah. Game 2, I think, was a lot quicker. But I don't remember exactly what the problem was in game. Oh! I remember! They sent me first in game 2. I don't know if they thought I was blinding second with Sky Striker, but this was I said in the deck profile no one ever did this, but this is not true. Now that I'm looking at this, this was the only person that sent me first in the entire weekend. Because I think maybe they thought I was playing blind second Sky Striker because they won the dice roll in game 1 and they just noticed like, oh, my board got broken, or maybe they just thought it was better in the matchup, but they did choose second. And it was relatively smooth sailing because my opener was fine, and it was like Widow Anchor 0. Oh, I opened Forbidden Crown, which I Forbidden Crowned their Snatchy, which was pretty sick. So yeah, I should have crowned the normal summon, I think, in hindsight. No, they started Marshmallow. They started Special Summon Marshmallow, and I thought about crowning it, but I decided against it because they hadn't used their normal summon yet, so I just crowned the Snatchy. But they hard drew the field spell to revive, plus Cupsy, so they could still play with like Linkuriboh because Snatchy points downwards, right? So they still make a Linkuriboh and then do stuff with it. But yeah. ultimately me setting up first and preventing them from playing a little bit with Crown and such was really good there. Round 6, I had a feature match, which you can check it out. I think it's, I guess it's a good showcase in some ways, because I think it's, I mean, I don't blame my opponent. They were really nice and they were really nervous. So I've seen some of the comments under that feature match, and people are not nice to my opponent because they did make some mistakes and they didn't play perfectly, by no means. But also I was there. I saw they were very nervous. So I felt bad for them. They were already nervous when they came to the normal table when we were supposed to play. And then when the judge came and collected us for a feature match, they got even more nervous. And, you know, so please just be nice, okay? There was one incident in particular that I think is really interesting in that feature match in game 1, when I think they go Albaz fuse with my Link monster on their turn, and I bring back Ray, and they summon Mirror Jade, and they didn't use turn player priority to activate Mirror Jade. They summon Mirror Jade, I bring back Ray, and I asked them, you know, anything on res, and they're like, nothing. So I tag out my Ray into the 0, and then again I asked them anything on summon, they say no, and I tag out the 0 and then pop the Mirror Jade. Which, of course, because Mirror Jade doesn't target, if they just use turn player priority, send some, like activate the effect when my Ray is still on the board. If I chain Ray to summon 0, the 0 immediately gets banished, and I can't use it to destroy the Mirror Jade. So there's a chance they could have won game 1 off of this. I still would have survived that turn because I had Rose in hand, so I could have still summoned Rose to block an attack. But since they didn't use the turn player priority there, which is honestly, it's something I think it's understandable to miss. So I didn't blame them for it, and I think it's okay. It happens. But yeah, I won that feature match, which I was really happy about, because I had the last, I think it was 3 feature matches I had. I lost all of them. I lost 2 feature matches at YCS Bologna, and I lost, what was it before? What was the feature match before then? I don't know, but it's been a while since I've won a feature match, so that was kind of nice. But yeah, round 7 I played against Malice, which was a really, I mean, for me it was a fun round, because game 1 I went first. I made my board, which was an okay board, nothing too crazy, but it was okay. It was like 0 Lemnis Gate, Widow Anchor or something like that. And they drew for turn and they just left. They just scooped it up, and I was like, okay, that's cool. Game 2, they went first. They thought about like 30 seconds, and then they activated Shifter, and then they passed. I was like, okay. And then I activated Reinforcement of the Army. They went Ash. I went Talents, look at their hand, and their hand was Bell, March Hare, and Impulse. So at that point, I learned that they were playing Malice. And I took the March Hare away, so I knew they had Bell and Impulse and nothing else. And I had like Engage, which couldn't draw because I had no spells engraved because Shifter, but I just engaged for Ray. I just attacked, and I tagged out into like 0 or something, and I had like a Widow Anchor covering their top deck, and then the game was over. So that was my Malice experience. That was my only Malice experience over the course of the entire weekend as well. Which, you know, I went first. They couldn't play through a single Widow Anchor. They told me after, like, they lost to Widow Anchor plus Lemnis Gate. That's why they didn't want to show the deck. And it did work. It was smart for them to scoop, because I think I sided for Draco Tail. And then, yeah, game 2, they just bricked, I guess. They didn't Impulse Ray effect? Yeah, because they can't, because I have no cards when I tribute it. That's why I did it that way. Round 8, I played against Branded Draco Tail again. So this is, at this point, my 4th Branded Draco Tail of the weekend, I think. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah. This was the 4th Branded Draco Tail in round 8. So 50% Branded Draco Tail so far. Yeah, that one was a dice roll win, and it was a pretty straightforward game, all things considered. It was all 3 of these games were fun. I don't remember much about them, but I remember that they were good back and forth all 3 games. I remember game 2, they made a pretty strong board and I almost broke it, but I ended up losing, I think, because they had, I think it was a very late Ghost Bell. Farva, thank you for the 10 gifties. Appreciate you. I hope you had a good time watching the triple YCS this weekend. But yeah, okay, so game 2, I couldn't break their board because they ended up having, I think it was Dragon's Mind early and then Bell late in the turn, and that destroyed me. And then I won game 3 with a very clutch Eagle Booster on 0. But my game 3 opener in this game was really, really strong. I basically I had everything I can ask for, and I don't think they had Ash. So I started with a lot of card advantage in that game. So I beat that. And then round 9, I was a little bit surprised that I was able to win the match this smoothly, but I got paired against K9 Vanquish Soul and I lost the dice roll, which I felt like was an okay matchup for this deck, but it really depends. It's funny because it really depends on what kind of Vanquish Soul duelist you are sitting across from when you play this deck, because I feel like the way I look at it is there are two types of K9 Vanquish Soul duelists, you know? The one kind who focuses a lot on the K9 plays of the deck, and the other kind, you really have the thing go off 10 times. Yeah, it changed at some point, and I don't know how to change it back. But yeah, I muted it now. What was I saying? Oh yeah, the types of Vanquish Soul duelists. Funnily enough, the part that's hard for Sky Striker to beat is the Vanquish Soul stuff. The stuff that I don't have a problem with is the K9 cards, because I never play into Izuna, I never give value to Ripper, and I have a really easy time breaking all of the rank 5 stuff. Like the quick play spell is no problem for me, the Ripper doesn't bother me, the Nash Knight or Masquerade isn't a problem for me. So all of that doesn't really matter. But the Vanquish Soul card advantage is what can outgrind me. Like if they go first and if they set up the Vanquish Soul stuff, they can make it really hard for me to kill them, and they can also make it really hard for me to outgrind them because they have like 6 cards in hand and crazy resource loop, right? And so the good thing for me in this match is that game 1, they opened really well. It was like first activation was Chaotic Elements into Jokul, and then they also had Mad Love. But they decided at some point, I think they overlaid Holly Sue and Jiaolong for Nash Knight, because they already had Ripper. And basically what ended up happening is they didn't go for the Vanquish Soul trap. They just had, it was like Rock, Ripper, Chaos Masquerade, and Mad Love with the field spell and the quick play spell for K9 face down, but only one Vanquish Soul. So they just passed. So I thought they didn't even play the trap card, because some people don't play the Vanquish Soul trap. Some people just play Forced Release, right? So because they had the option to go for the Vanquish Soul trap and didn't, I thought they didn't play it. And that was also the reason why I won the first game. Like I don't know if I OTK'd them game 1 or if I just like I think I took apart the entire board and then they couldn't play on the follow-up turn. Is the trap even good against Sky Striker? It's the trap is fine against Sky Striker. It's not that good, but it's more about the way you play if you want to go for the trap is different, because you keep more Vanquish Soul names on the board, and you also typically keep more resources in hand because you need the attributes. And your interruptions on the opponent's turn in general are very layered with the trap card, because like the trap card summons like Raisin somewhere, and then you can pop with that as well. It's a lot less board focused, right? Whereas the K9 quick play spell requires you to have a board to be an interruption, right? The trap, basically, I can start breaking the board, and then you can activate the trap and put stuff on the board again. But with the K9 quick play spell, it's like if I remove your board, the card is dead. So I think that ended up being why I won the first game, is because they focused more on K9, less on Vanquish Soul, and that was good for me. And then game 2, it was even worse for them because they didn't open Raisin or Madlove. They just opened, it was normal summon Noroi, I think. And I was like, okay, my hand was really mid in game 2. I think I had 2 copies of, I remember it was 2 pair. I don't know what 2 pair. It was definitely 2 copies of the Radiant Typhoon Quick Play spell. 2 copies of some other spell. I don't remember which one. Not a crazy one, though. I think Linkage. I think it was, yeah, it was 2 Linkage, 2 Radiant Typhoon Vision, and I think 1 Fallen and the Virtuous. That was my 5 cards that they looked at with Noroi. But then it turned out that they didn't play Saryuja. So because they didn't play Saryuja, they couldn't bridge into or try to draw Vanquish Soul cards. It was just a K9 board. It was Ripper, Masquerade, Quick Play Spell, and some non-engine. And I ran over that like no problem. I think I even got drolled. But that I'm not sure if that happened. I think they had droll, but I'm not entirely sure. But it was no problem. I walked over it no problem. So yeah. So that I was honestly after losing round 2, I was really happy to go 8-1 in day 1 with Sky Striker, because there was a lot of matches that were really close. I mean, there was a couple of 2-0s as well here, which I was really happy about. But also there, especially the Draco Tail matches were really close. Even my round 1 was really close. I could have lost that one easily if they opened better in game 3. But it was a lot of really long and grindy games. So I was really happy to walk away 8-1 with it after day 1. And so for day 2, I was paired against Branded Draco Tail again. We can keep count. I think this is Branded Draco Tail number 5 in 10 rounds. And I beat that one despite losing the dice roll. I 2-0'd them. Game 1 was a classic Draco Tail game where they fully set up, but I was able to grind through it because they didn't have Ash and Bell behind it. And then game 2, it was... Game 2, I remember them opening with the Albaz and then summoning Cartesia, but then not activating the Cartesia effect because they didn't draw Draco. Oh no, wait, what was it? It was no. It was normal summon Ecclesia, special summon Albaz, revive Ecclesia Tuner, and make the Ecclesia Synchro. And then they passed with the Ecclesia Synchro. And that's why I thought they had Cartesia in hand. Because they had already normal summoned, but they could have special summoned the Cartesia. Yeah, no, I misinterpreted their opener. I realized that now. Because they passed with the Ecclesia on the board, the Synchro. And I was like, okay, that means they can't use the effect, which must mean they have Cartesia in hand. Right? Which I now realize is not what happened, because they then summoned. They later on they told me. Now I know I was wrong, but I thought they had Cartesia in hand. But what turns out what was the case was they just didn't have Draco Tails in hand, so they didn't feel the need to summon the Cartesia from the deck. But they ended up summoning it on my turn, I think. But yeah, it was a weird game. Basically, they opened hand traps and some Albaz stuff, but no Draco Tail names. So they couldn't really do much other than summon the Synchro Pass and then have some hand traps. That game I definitely got drolled. I got drolled that game, but it didn't matter because they didn't have engine, right? So is the #1 priority against Draco Tail to limit the draws from their traps? So the game plan against Draco Tail is to let them set up and then to, yes, prevent as many of the traps as possible so that they cannot get the recycling going so that you can outgrind them. So you try to remove their board while preventing the traps from drawing. And then over the course of like 2 or 3 turns, you try to cut them off of the follow-up. And eventually they run out of like targets for the graveyard effects. That's the goal, yeah. But yeah, anyways. A good start to the day. Round 10, I won against Draco Tail, and I was on 9-1. And also, I pulled... I opened my pack, and I got this guy. which I thought was really neat. I didn't have this one yet. I was really happy with that. The Caesar got pulled. All right, round 11, I won against Radiant Typhoon, which put me to 10-1. This one I remember being I went first game 1. They didn't really have much of a chance in game 1, even though they played into it. There was one interesting moment where they summoned, I think it was Crocea. I had Widow Anchor, and I decided to go instead of just activating Widow Anchor on the Crocea so they could dodge it with Droplet, I decided to go chain 0 and then chain Widow Anchor, so I had no monsters on the board, so they couldn't activate Droplet, which I thought was a cool play. Turns out they didn't have Droplet anyway, so it didn't matter, but I thought it was cool. Then in round 12, I lost to Branded Draco Tail, which was a very, very solid match, but ultimately it just comes down to if the Draco Tail player draws well and plays well, they have a pretty solid chance to beat this deck. Like, basically, in both of those games, they opened strong non-engine, is what makes the difference. This is something that this deck struggles with. Every single Draco Tail board is beatable for Sky Striker pretty much every time, unless your hand is completely ass. But with any somewhat solid or average hand, you can beat the Draco Tail board no problem. But it becomes a huge problem if they draw multiple good non-engine. I would say one to two non-engine are beatable. Like if, let's say, they have, like, I don't know, a Dragon's Mind and a Bell, that's doable. But if they have like critical mass of those, then it becomes a big problem. And I remember in those games, they opened really well. They opened like Branded Fusion plus Draco Tail combo plus multiple non-engine both times. And they also, I gotta give it to them, they played it well as well. They definitely played it well. They used their interruptions and their non-engine in the right spots. So after this round, I couldn't really complain. It was just like, you know, my opponent drew well and played well, so they won. It was okay. But it's how it is sometimes. But this was Branded Draco Tail number 6. And so far, my record against Branded Draco Tail is 4-2. So it's okay, you know, for Draco Tail being the best deck in the format, or at least in this YCS, I think it was also the most represented deck in Top Cut. So it's okay. Round 13 was another Radiant Typhoon, where I ended up winning 2-0, where I went first. I had a solid opener game 1, and they couldn't beat it, and then game 2, they just bricked, which was really unfortunate. Like for them, I guess. I mean, I didn't complain about it, but they opened, I think it was set 3 pass, and then I played through it, and like I didn't even win quickly because they had non-engine to stop me a little bit, but realistically, you know, like I knew I was winning immediately because I had solid plays, and then also I had interaction for whatever they top deck. Like if I knew if they draw a Crocea now, I can stop it. Like I had like Droplet or something, so I can like activate Droplet, send a spell so they can't activate like a Fallen and the Virtuous or Droplet themselves to dodge it. So I was like, you know, oh, yeah. Radiant Typhoon seems overhyped. I don't know. I think Radiant Typhoon is a pretty strong deck. My deck just had a good matchup against it. Realistically, like my deck is supposed to beat Radiant Typhoon, but yes, it is a little bit bricky, but it's not a bad deck. It's too bricky to perform and was so targeted. There's downsides to it. I mean, ultimately, yes, those are the reasons why I talked about this last week before the YCS. I talked about that. Those were the reasons why I was hesitant to play Radiant Typhoon. I like the playstyle. I think it's good, but it is a little bit bricky, and people tend to have a lot of hate in the side deck for it at the moment. So I was hesitant to do it, but it is a good deck. It's definitely a good deck. So yeah, at that point I was 11-2, and there was 2 more rounds of Swiss, so I needed to win the last 2 rounds to make it into the top 8. Round 14, the dream was over. I got destroyed by Branded Draco Tail in round 14, where I lost a dice roll, and in both games, it was pretty rough. Like game 1, I think it was the full board plus Ash plus Bell. And my hand was okay, not great. So I didn't really, I didn't really get to do much. Game 2 was probably the worst opening hand I had all weekend, where my only play was Hornet Drones. My only play was Hornet Drones. I activate Hornet Drones, I make Kagari, I add back Hornet Drones, I activate Hornet Drones again, I make 0, and it gets Veilered. I have Crossout in hand, but I don't play Veiler for Crossout. I also had no Fallen spell to dodge it, so I just got Veilered on my 0, and I couldn't do anything else. And then I had a couple of sets. Like, I had, it was like Widow Anchor, Crossout, and something else. And then they started playing, and I activated. I think they went normal summon Cartesia, and they didn't use the effect. They didn't use the priority to activate the effect. Then I activated. I think I activated 0 to tag out. They went Ash. I went Crossout on Ash, and then they chained Called By on my 0. And at that point, I was completely out of engine. And they had Cartesia on the board. And then next step, they went activate Rahu. And the last card in hand was Urgula. So I got completely destroyed. It was not doable. So at that point, I was 11-3, which meant I couldn't make top 8 anymore. But yeah. One of your losses against Draco Tail should have been Marco Parenti. He said he won because Sanctifier not being targetable. Well, the round 14 was against Marco Parenti. I don't remember if he summoned a Sanctifier. In game 2, he definitely didn't. In game 1? No, I don't think the Sanctifier mattered. I don't think Sanctifier mattered in that game. Maybe he summoned it in game 1. I don't remember the Sanctifier being a problem, though. But yeah, anyways. Round 15. Oh yeah, round 15 is not here. Round 15 is later. Right, I just made one final post. Round 15, I played against fellow Radiant Trade team member Nico on Radiant Typhoon. At this point, it was a pretty chill match because we both were X3. We both knew we couldn't make top 8 anymore. So it was a really friendly and fun game. I ended up going first game 1, and it was funny because as soon as I didn't have a chance to top anymore, I opened the most broken hand I've ever opened in the entire tournament. I won the dice roll, I went first, and I think I resolved 4 engages on turn 1 and desires. I banished nothing important. It was the perfect opener, and at some point I had 9 cards in hand in turn 1 when it quote unquote didn't matter anymore. I was like, my opener was like 0, 5 sets, Ash in hand. I don't think I had Bell, but it was 0, 5 sets, 4 cards in hand. One of them was Ash. It was insane. Best opener I had all weekend. And then yeah, okay, well, I won that one. Game 2 he won going first, and then game 3 I won. Yeah, it was okay. So game 3, my opener was mediocre. I sided out Mystical Space Typhoon going first against Radiant Typhoon because it's obviously really weak. And I opened triple Radiant Typhoon Vision. So I could activate 1 to draw 2 and then discard another one. But I was still stuck with the 3rd copy in hand, which is kind of awkward. And then his opener was also not great. There was a moment where I think I opened Ash and Droll going first, but no real play because I think he ashed my only play, which was either it was Engage or Rhoda. I don't remember, but he ashed my only play after I drew 2 with Vision. And then I passed. And then next turn, it was like I activated Vision blind without a quick play spell in hand because otherwise I would lose the game. And then I drew, my hand was Ash, Droll, Vision. I activate Vision to draw, and I draw, first card I draw is Desires, and the second card I draw is a quick play spell. And then I can activate Desires, and then Desires draws me Upstart, and then Upstart draws me a play, and then I win. yeah, it was pretty tense. But I ended up winning round 15. Which was okay, all things considered. And then I of course, tiebreakers, I still had to hope a little bit because there was a lot of X3s, but the tiebreakers were good enough for top 16, so I was really happy about that. And ultimately, I think pretty happy with the performance with Sky Striker, honestly. I think there's... the losses I had against Dracotail, I think are all understandable. I think they're all fine. I think they're all something that other decks would probably also lose. And overall, with I think my dice roll win rate was definitely negative again. So I think if I had played a different deck that wasn't as good going second as Sky Striker, I may have struggled a little bit more. But do you know how many Worlds points you will get from this? They already updated there's some people running a spreadsheet for the Worlds points. They're keeping track of it, and apparently I'm in 17th place again, which is good. Of course, top 16 qualify, but I'm not far behind. I think I'm 1 point behind 16th. So we are back in it from the last two YCSs where I got that the regional season started mediocre for me, but the last two YCSs really helped. You know, I got top 8 at Bologna, top 16 at Dortmund now. So I'm back in it, which is cool. So if nationals and the upcoming regionals are going well, then you know, it's doable. Oh yeah. All right, before we take a look at the results from the other tournaments, I just quickly want to talk about some of the questions that people had in under the YouTube video, or I guess you can also ask some questions right here. Let me just lay out the deck list real quick. I'm not going to go over the card explanations individually because I did that in the deck profile, which, by the way, feel free to check out the deck profile on YouTube if you want a more detailed explanation on the deck list. And also, feel free to subscribe on YouTube. We are getting very, very close to 100K. I think we're basically at 99 now. So we are getting very, very close. The number one question that I got, or I guess the two main questions that I got are, how did you side deck? And also, how did you like Forbidden Crown? Because of course, the decision to only play Forbidden Crown in the side deck might be a little weird, because of course this card is a very powerful spell and people have been liking it a lot in Sky Striker, and so did I. And also the going first thing, yeah. So number one, let's go one by one. Going first, I believe that going first with Sky Striker in this format is mandatory. Because what I talked about earlier is a very, very common dynamic in the format. In the current format, you basically, if you let your opponent combo first with a deck like this, and this is something that it's not even true exclusively for Sky Striker, but also true for a lot of other decks in the format, and also, I guess, could be considered one of the problems of modern Yu-Gi-Oh! Is that at the moment, I feel like, and I guess you can let me know if you have similar experiences when you're playing Yu-Gi-Oh! These days. One of the greatest things about modern Yu-Gi-Oh! Decks, for most of them, is that you look at their end board when they're done playing, and you actually feel like it's winnable. This happens to me a lot when I play Yu-Gi-Oh! These days. Very, very often, I look at a Dracotail board, I look at a Radiant Typhoon board, I look even at a Vanquish Soul Canine board, and I think like, okay, you know what? I can win this, right? This is worth playing, and this is not just with Sky Striker. This is in general. However, as soon as they start having like 1 to 2 to maybe 3 solid non-engine next to that board is when it becomes like unbeatable. Which is a separate discussion on it in itself, like the power of non-engine and the fact that non-engine should be better going second than going first. But like, I think especially right now, you know, when there's certain decks that like go first, produce a lot of card advantage, have a strong board, and then you're going second, and your stuff just gets negated by stuff like Ash, I think it becomes infinitely harder to win, and this is the same problem with this deck. Every time I go second with this deck, I feel like I can win, unless my opponent also has Ash and or Bell or Droll, or like too many of the other non-engine like Imperm and stuff like that. Imperm is usually fine. Imperm isn't really a big deal for this deck, but especially Ash and Bell are huge problems for this deck, which is why I also played Crossout and Called By in the main deck. And I think if you blind second, you put yourself into that position willingly every single round to essentially lose if your opponent draws a playable hand plus one or two of these guys. And since especially Ash is in every single deck and Bell is in most decks at the moment, or at least a solid portion of the decks, I think that makes you unlikely to perform at a tournament if you do this every single game. If you do this every single game, I think there's just going to be too many games where your opponent opens one starter and some hand traps and you can't win the game. And that's why I think you have to go first. Because when you go first with Sky Striker, if your opponent has Ash or Bell, yes, they hurt, but at least you get hit with Ash or Bell before your opponent has an overwhelming board. You know, you get hit with the Ash or Bell when you are in like the building the board phase. You are not trying to break a board at the same time while generating a like card advantage. So it really helps to get drolled before your opponent plays. It helps to get ashed or belled before your opponent plays. If you get ashed or belled after your opponent plays, then you usually lose the game. And I think that's the reason to go first with this deck, is so that you can establish some interruptions, you can establish your own game plan before your opponent puts up a board that just attacks you for a game immediately next turn, right? So that is that. I think there's a consideration to maybe go second post side in certain matchups, but yeah. Okay. Next, side deck, or like ratios, I guess. So for the most part, the stuff that I side out in this deck is usually I side out one Rose, one Desires going second, usually, as well as some amount of Upstart Goblins. This is to avoid Droll post side, because I think Droll is more common in side decks right now than in main decks. So having these cards in your main deck, there is no downside to it, but post side, especially going second when Droll hurts the most, I want to reduce the number of these cards in the deck a little bit. Also, in some matchups, like for example against Radiant Typhoon, I do take out 2 copies of Ash Blossom, which might sound counterintuitive, but I personally, even though Radiant Typhoon is a little bit bricky, I do not want to play the hand trap minigame with them. I do not want to Ash one of their starters to just hope they can't play. And I also don't want to hope that they don't have the means to chain block their Crocea. I just keep 1 Ash, 1 Bell for cross out against Radiant Typhoon. The other 2 I side out. Some matchups I side out these one-offs. Sometimes side out 1 Hornet Drone, sometimes side out 1 Eagle Booster, sometimes side out a Shark Cannon. Going first, sometimes I side out the Mystical Space Typhoon if it's not great in the matchup, like against Draco Tail, for example. You can side this out going first. Against Radiant Typhoon, you side this out going first. If it's not a strong interruption in the matchup, I would take out the MST going first. Similar to the Fallen and the Virtuous, this card I side out against Draco Tail when I'm going first, because the spot removal is not that important, and dodging Flame is more important when you're going second. Although sometimes you can decide to keep 2 in the deck as well. So these are the card, and Droplet can sometimes go out going first as well. So these are your options when you're talking side outs, I think. I don't think I've sided out these cards over here ever. There was one matchup where I sided out a Widow Anchor. I don't remember what it was. Maybe it was Yummy going second. But nah, it wasn't Yummy going second. But yeah. Oh yeah. So that is the rough siding patterns. Whereas, I mean, the side-ins should be relatively obvious, but I guess we can go over it. Shared Ride is only for going first against decks that search a lot. Forbidden Crown is exclusively for going first in basically every matchup, but going second, you can also side it versus Vanquish Soul and Yummy. Basically the decks where they have one endboard piece that is very annoying and very small, like Snatchy or Rock of the Vanquisher, because then you just negate that, and then you can attack it for game a couple of times, which is neat. Droll and Lockbird is, I mean, going second against the heavy combo decks, because those are a hard matchup, and then going first against Radiant Typhoon is also really strong. Hamp is for everything like Luna Light, but also for everything that has like really annoying endboard pieces. Like, I sided it in against Yummy, for example, because like maybe you just go normal summon Ray, they don't do anything, and then you can hamp the Snatchy or hamp the Zalen or whatever. So yeah. 2 Thrust, which I side going second all the time. Every matchup, I side this card going second because it's amazing going second. Going first, I only sided against decks where I side the DDG, which is at the moment, I think, in the entire tournament, only Draco Tail. There might be other decks where I would side this, but basically it has to be a deck where it's really good against it, and they also play enough hand traps to justify putting in Thrust. And then the Lightning Storms and Feather Duster are going second into most decks that have either a lot of back row or in this case a lot of like monsters in attack position, but for the most part the back row decks like Radiant Typhoon and Draco Tail. So yeah. What do you do against the second Liger Dancer? Okay, so the realistically, because I also saw people asking like, oh, what's the plan against Spell Canceller? This deck is a meta call, okay? Realistically, if your opponent summons 2 Ligers, you lose. If your opponent summons Spell Canceller, you lose. You have a very, very small chance to beat those decks, only. Like, for example, Ray can out Spell Canceller if they have nothing else, because you can go 0 and tag out and pop it. But realistically, yes, those decks are going to beat you if you don't have, like, specifically Droll and Lockbird to stop them from setting up. There is a very, very small chance against Double Liger, which is that you can hamp one of them and then you can bounce the hamp back with Lemnis Gate. Which we never even tested that in practice, whether that works or not consistently. But in theory, you can give them hamp and then you can Lemnis Gate it back to your hand and then hamp them again next turn. But that means you do have to like survive a turn against Liger Dancer, which you can technically do if you draw like a Forbidden Crown, or you can access Eagle Booster and they can't stop it. But yeah. You can't Lemnis Hamp, can you? It's not an ace monster. Well, no, you can't cycle it from the grave. But you can, they have it on the board, you can bounce it. The Charmies? The Charmies are weird in this deck, but they're not bad. It's just that, like, in theory, it's very dependent on the order of how it happens, right? Like, if you have the Charmy in your opening hand, and then you draw all of your powerful spell cards with it, and your opponent makes a smaller board, then I think it's amazing, right? Like, if you open the Charmy, it's amazing. The problem is this deck draws so many cards later on in the turn and in the game that I feel like if you put in 3 or 6 Charmies, you are almost guaranteed to draw into dead cards. Go Hamp, Typhon plus Eagle Booster with 3 spells engraved, then Hamp again next turn. Yeah, that can work actually. That's neat. Yeah. That would work. Yeah, you can Typhon the Hamp back to your hand immediately, and then you have it ready for next turn. Yeah, that's cool. I could see that, yeah. Did you ever consider playing Curse Seal? Yes, we considered playing Curse Seal or Radiant Typhoon. But ultimately, we figured, or like, we had versions of this side deck which had more specific side deck cards. For example, there was a point where we had Lava Golem in the deck to cover for Luna Light and K9 Crystron with Spell Cancel, right? We had a version with Lava Golem. We also had a version with Curse Seal of the Forbidden Spell for Radiant Typhoon. But we ran into this problem where if we play those super specific cards for only one matchup, we just don't have enough room in the side deck to cover everything, right? Like we and then that's when we decided to go like, okay, instead of doing Lava Golems, we're going to do Crowns and Hamp, because this gives us a theoretical chance against Lunalight, but we can also side the Crown in every other matchup, right? We don't have to just hope that we play against Lunalight for the Lava Golems to be good or whatever. And honestly, for K9 Crystron, we just accepted that it would probably be a loss if they win the dice roll. If we're going first against K9 Crystron, it's fine. But if we go second, then it's okay. We lose. Like, we have draw maybe game 3, but realistically, you just gotta manage. I think that's also important when you're preparing for tournaments and you're building a deck. Sometimes you don't have to be able to beat everything. If you predict that, for example, in Europe, I didn't think many people were gonna play K9 Christian. Like, it's just not a very popular deck at the moment, and I saw no one play it. And so I think it was okay to make the call that we don't need an out for Spell Canceller. Yeah, I think that's fine. But yes, if I had run into a K9 Christian, I probably would have lost. All right, and that brings us to some more general analysis of the 300th YCS weekend. Of course, we have 3 tournaments from all over the world to talk about the results. So my own performance aside now, we've got some other things to take a look at. 300th YCS Dortmund, 300th YCS Richmond, and 300th YCS Guadalajara. We have results. The winning decks. We have Vanquish Soul, Yummy, Radiant Typhoon Tri-Brigade, and Vanquish Soul. Which, first and foremost, I think is the first thing to point out is that I think Vanquish Soul performed really, really well at these tournaments in general. Now, I will say, I think the overall, like, I was surprised to see this because I thought Vanquish Soul was strong, but I personally, I think I rated it like a strong deck, but not like not like the best deck in the format, but it definitely performed like a top tier deck in the format. Or rather, maybe it's like, because I'm looking at these numbers, right? And I'm seeing like, okay, in Dortmund, we only had 2 Vanquish Souls in top 64. Maybe some more because not every list is known yet, so this is not the complete data set, but there was not that many Vanquish Souls if we compare it to like Draco Tales, for example. And in Richmond, we had 13 in top 64. And in Mexico, we had, okay, there's only info on 2 in the top 32, but they're also missing a lot of the decks from this. So maybe Vanquish Soul is the type of deck that like has a better time converting a top cut into a win, is how I would interpret this. You know, like if you make it into day 2 or if you make it into the top cut, then Vanquish Soul is a pretty solid choice, which is ultimately the reason why I personally didn't play Draco Tail. Which is, it's a very interesting concept if you really get deep into like competitive Yu-Gi-Oh! What deck to play, because this is something I talked about the week before the event. I made a video where I talked about like deck choice and everything, and I mentioned like I think Draco Tail is a very, very solid deck that has a very high chance of making it into day 2, you know, and we do see Draco Tail being the most represented deck in top 64, probably at all 3. I mean, at the Mexican YCS right now, we don't have complete data, but for the most part, Draco Tail was the most represented deck in those top 64s. However, I also said that if you make it deep into the tournament, I think Draco Tail is not the most likely deck to win it all, because the chances that you play either mirror matches or you play against other players that are very well prepared for Draco Tail is very high. And this holds up. You know, in Dortmund, we had 5 Draco Tails in top 8, which is a lot. That's a lot of Draco Tail in top 8, but none of them were able to win the event. Which, of course, there's a lot of variance when it comes to like the top 8 of a tournament. A lot of things can happen. You know, a lot of things can be decided by like a single brick or a lucky top deck or whatever, you know, but still, the fact that Draco Tail was very well represented in the top cuts, but didn't actually manage to win one of these tournaments, I think it speaks volumes about this sort of stuff, right? Like, I think Draco Tail was a really solid pick for these tournaments, but I think it was unlikely to win with it because everyone was prepared for it. So it's an interesting concept when you're choosing a deck for a tournament that I already talked about in that last video. But I think it checks out, and I think it says nothing about how strong Dracotail is as a deck. It just means Dracotail is a consistent and strong deck, but it is, like any Yu-Gi-Oh deck, exploitable. Every Yu-Gi-Oh deck gets worse when everyone expects it. Every Yu-Gi-Oh deck has a smaller chance of winning a tournament if everyone knows it's coming. If everyone knows that it's going to be the most represented deck, then you're going to have a harder time. And this is what's happening to Dracotail right now. It is a really strong deck, but people are preparing for it, which is why, especially in the later stages of a tournament, it's going to be difficult. And Vanquish Soul, for the most part, is strong, but I feel like there is also less targeted hate for Vanquish Soul right now. I would say the worst thing that happens to Vanquish Soul at the moment is like when they get hit with a Perulia, that people are mainly playing for Radiant Typhoon, right? But it is, I mean, it's a really strong deck, and it still has a decent Dracotail matchup. Droll 2, yes, but the Droll argument is probably a stronger one for Vanquish Soul than against Vanquish Soul, because right now, where is Droll? It's in the side deck most of the time. Most of the time, people are side decking Droll and not main decking it, which is statistically a big difference. If you basically never expect to get hit by Droll in game 1, that's a massive deal for decks like that can struggle into Droll. So if Vanquish Soul was able to perform in a format where Droll was at 3, and Droll was also main decked a lot because of Yami and Mitsu, or Yami Mitsu rather, then why would it not be able to perform when Droll gets moved to 2 and to the side deck? You know what I mean? Which brings me to, honestly, the biggest surprise for me personally, which is the Malice success at these tournaments, which is crazy to me. And I'm trying to think about how in the world this deck is still doing so well, because I've talked to some people who play Malice or played Malice previously. I talked to Yuna, who she got top 8 at the World Championship with Malice, and she didn't even play Malice anymore. She said, like, oh, in testing, Nibiru was just too big of a problem. And here's the thing, maybe that's one of the reasons why it was still able to perform, because no one plays Nibiru right now. Almost no one. I shouldn't say no one, because some people definitely did, but compared to previous formats, I think Nibiru is at an all-time low in terms of popularity. So I think that could be one of the reasons why Malice was still able to perform. Another reason, and I think this is something that should never be underestimated, is that the non-engine quality in this deck is still insane. So maybe it's not a matter of, because genuinely, maybe the Malice endboard is fine now. Maybe it's because I don't actually think that without Whitebinder, this deck's endboard is that crazy. I genuinely don't think it's something to complain about. From what I've seen, like, the deck is still here, I guess, but I don't feel too negative about Malice right now. I think without Whitebinder, maybe there's a world where I can accept this deck. You know, it still draws 2 from Chessie, 2 from Heat Soul, and plays the best non-engine in the game. Yes. Yes, it is still really powerful, and I think the ability to draw a bunch of cards with the ability, paired with the ability to play this much non-engine, is somewhat of a problem, but I feel like this is more of a, I think this plays maybe it plays more into the thing that I talked about earlier, where I think sometimes non-engine is just too important and too strong going first in Yu-Gi-Oh right now. Like, I feel like there is too many situations right now where the game is completely winnable and playable, but then your opponent has opened a lot of non-engine, and then you can't win anymore when they went first. And I think Malice might just be one of the more extreme examples of this, because the way I expect this deck to play, and now I haven't done extensive testing with this deck or against this deck for obvious reasons, but if this deck goes first, I would assume that you look at its end board and you're like, okay, that's strong, but that's something I can deal with. But then, because the deck plays 9, 11, 14, 17 hand traps, including some of the most powerful hand traps in the game, like Dominus Impulse, and draws a bunch of cards, what ends up happening is that they go first, it looks winnable, but then as you start playing into the game, into the board, they start revealing more and more of their non-engine, and then you realize, oh, it was never winnable to begin with. You know what I mean? It was always more like that. It kind of was like that. Realistically, yes, yeah, maybe. Yeah, you know what? Maybe it was always like that. I remember it being like that in Master Duel as well. Like, very often I played against Malice with Draco Tail, and then it was like, you know what? I can beat this, but then they had Impulse and Ash, and I got cooked. I don't know. I guess that's the question, right? It's like, is this deck still good? Yes, because it has 1-card combos, it draws cards, and it plays crazy non-engine. So there you go. And people are not playing the cards that are good against it right now. You know, you don't really see people play Lancia. You don't really see people play Nib. If people played Nib everywhere right now, then this deck would definitely suffer. But yeah. I think you could also argue that non-engine that is too powerful going first is also a problem with how modern archetypes are designed in Yu-Gi-Oh! I think you could argue that too. I think you could argue if Impulse and Ash weren't as powerful as they are when you go first, then maybe this deck wouldn't really be that strong. But yeah. Wow. All right, what else did we have? We don't have the winning list from Dortmund yet, but I think we have the one from, yeah, we have the Vanquish Soul list from the YCS in Mexico, which they did main deck Perulia and Puwalos and Ash and Bell. This is a pretty cookie cutter Vanquish Soul list. This is what I was referring to earlier when I said not every Vanquish Soul played the trap. This one didn't. They cited the trap for going first. This is another thing. Like, I guess, I mean, this is the coldest take ever, but one of the most common things I saw this weekend were cards like Shifter, Fissure, and Different Dimension Ground being like the last bastion of floodgates, I guess. There's like, we are so close to eliminating this shit from the game, but somehow it still always remains. Oh yeah. They had the idea to put it back to 3. When did Di-Fi go back to 3? I feel like that's years ago at this point. But yeah, I mean, no one was a fan of that when they did that back then. Tier format? Oh, they did it to answer Tearlaments. It's all Tearlaments' fault, right? It's all Tearlaments' fault. Spell Canceller too? I mean, by all means, I think the situation is very simple. I think the steps that they've made in the last couple of ban lists were awesome, and you can really tell the difference. There is less floodgating going on than ever. But they do need to make sure to keep going, because the job is not done, I think. But yeah, it's decks like, it's just like we've moved away. The way I interpret it is we've moved away from some of the super generic floodgates that like every deck can play, looking at cards like Dimensional Barrier, right? Where it's like, that's a card that like every deck could play, so every deck did. We've now moved to some more like situational floodgates, in the sense that like not every deck can play D-Fissure, right? Like you can only play D-Fissure if your deck doesn't care about the grave, but your opponent's deck does, which as a result means you see less floodgates than before, but you still see them, you know? It's okay, guys. We get solemn report soon. Yeah, that's a different topic. That's a different topic. Is there a reason why Lunalight is not played much in the TCG? I think Lunalight is very popular right now. From my personal experience, also looking around at the YCS, I think I saw a decent amount of Lunalight. I really did. Like almost, I remember playing next to Lunalight a bunch of times and thinking like, oh, thank God I didn't get paired against them. But there's a decent amount of Lunalight right now. 3% of representation for Luna. Yeah, I mean that is a lot. Does Lunalight have any game plan except Liger? Not really, but to be fair, you don't really need another game plan if your game plan is that card. That card is crazy. All right. Radiant Typhoon Tri-Brigade Yummy won the NA-YCS in the hands of Kamal Crooks Valdez. Of course, I think 7th YCS win at this point. Crazy achievement. I mean, not like the 6th wasn't already a crazy achievement, but this one also really impressive. And I gotta admit, I didn't believe in this deck because I think it's rather weak into Molcharmies, but I think that is more of a personal preference kind of thing for me. I just don't like playing decks that fold too hard to a Molcharmy, which I think this deck does. But at the same time, you don't get Fuvat every time, and if you don't get Fuvat, then this deck is really strong. Kamal's the king of winning with decks that lose to Charmies, Crystron, and now this. I think that's very much it. I think it's just like statistically, it's okay to play combo decks even in a world where Fualos exist. I just don't like exposing myself to that level of variance of like I want to go first and not get Fuvat, and if that happens, then I win. But it's been proven over and over that it can work, you know. But I just remember looking at yesterday. I remember looking at the list from Mario D'Amico, who got second at this YCS. I remember looking at it, and I remember thinking it's crazy that Kamal won. I feel like this deck with this, look at this side deck. This should slaughter this, in my opinion. The fact that he opened no Fuwa, no Purulia, no Nib, and I don't know if he put in the Droll as well in this matchup, but like this deck should be giga favored over this deck. And he just opened like none of those cards in game 3, going second. He lost the dice roll. Didn't have Fuwa game 1, I believe. I didn't watch the full finals. I think I skipped through it. Because I was tired. I watched it at night when I was back home. But I think game 1, I think Kamal went first and like full comboed. And then Mario won game 2, and then game 3 he opened. I think he opened Holisu, but like it was like Holisu, 2 Raisin, Jiaolong, and Bell, and then the Jiaolong got ashed, so he didn't have a dark for Holisu. So yeah, it was pretty rough, especially. And then I looked at the list after, and I was like, that's crazy that worked. The roll for the starting player was already hype. It was 12 versus 12, and then Kamal rolled in 11. That is insane. But yeah, I mean, ultimately, sometimes that's how it is. Sometimes you can win unfavored matchups if your opponent just doesn't have one of the Charmies or the Nib, right? And this deck is essentially really strong against all of the other non-engine that people play, I think. I think this deck has a very easy time of playing through stuff like Ash or Bell, and playing through stuff like the Fallen and the Virtuous and Draco Tail Traps, you know, all the small interruptions. I think you have a pretty good chance of pushing through. Because you've got Droplet, you got your own Ash and Bell, you've got your MST package to dodge flames and stuff like that. So I think it's cool in that regard. But I personally didn't expect it to perform that well, but it did. That's interesting to see. And the end board, by all means, the end board is completely insane. Pac getting scammed by judge call was Sag. What happened there? I didn't hear about that. The 5 garnets inside is crazy. Yeah, I mean, that's classic NA, right? To be fair, it's not even classic NA. It's just classic modern Yu-Gi-Oh! It's like, if your deck doesn't get 10 times more toxic after siding, then what are you even doing? I suppose. The side deck conversation, I feel like at this point it's becoming a cold take to say that the side deck is kind of toxic in modern Yu-Gi-Oh! Maybe always has been for like years. Radiant spell, imperm in the column, MST target radiant spell to dodge. The judge ruled it dodged. So Pac had an imperm. Okay. Oh yeah, that shouldn't dodge, right? Because the effect still resolves on the field. I think, right? It still negates that one, yeah. Had to MST the imperm. Had to MST the imp. Hold up. Infinite imperm. If this card was set before activations on the field, their resolution for the rest of this turn, effects in this column are negated. So if it is not in the column anymore, it cannot check for the column anymore. But if the other card is gone, it works because the effect still resolves in that column. But wouldn't for that... Oh no, it's because it says is on the field at resolution. That's why it says that. Right? If it didn't say this, it would still negate. Yeah. But yeah, no, it should still... It is very counterintuitive, but it should still negate, yeah. All right, yeah. Did Pac lose a feature match because of that? Or what happened? Yeah, that's unfortunate.
It's negated.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, that sucks. Okay, hold on. Let me sort my tabs real quick. What else do we have? We have... All right, we've talked about Draco Tail. We've talked Radiant Typhoon. How do you guys feel about Radiant Typhoon's performance this weekend? Because I know that the week leading up to the YCS, in my testing circle, people were really expecting a lot of Radiant Typhoon, and everyone was like, you know, it's everywhere. People are testing it. People are preparing for it. Like, it almost felt like for a brief period in time, Radiant Typhoon was a more anticipated deck than branded Draco Tail for this YCS, which I always thought was kind of crazy. I always thought like it was going to be more branded Draco Tail than Radiant Typhoon in terms of representation for sure. But maybe at like day 2 or top player level, maybe there would be more people deciding to play Radiant Typhoon. I wasn't sure about that. Ultimately, I would say the Radiant Typhoon performance, a little bit underwhelming. The best placement for Radiant, the best placement for Radiant Typhoon was top 4. 1 top 4 in Mexico. No, not even a top 8 at Richmond. Not even a top 16 at Richmond. 1 top 32. And then we have 1 top 8 in Dortmund. So that's rough. And I don't know. I can only say from my perspective of playing against the deck, I definitely Radiant Typhoon was the deck that I played against the second most this weekend. I played against 7 Draco Tail, 4 Radiant Typhoon. I beat all the Radiant Typhoon, and it was also the brickiest deck I faced. Like, there was no deck where my opponents drew as bad as they did with Radiant Typhoon, which was my number 1 concern with the deck beforehand. But it was definitely confirmed. Like, I had 2 opponents go first with Radiant Typhoon and just pass, with setting some spells, obviously. But yeah, Radiant Typhoon is the new Memento. I think Radiant Typhoon, the one thing that Radiant Typhoon does really well is go into other decks and make them stronger. Like, this is something, we see this, you know, Radiant Typhoon is in the winning deck for YCS Richmond. They play Radiant Typhoon as an engine to get going. Really strong there. The Memento deck played Radiant Typhoon as well to go into the Goblin Biker Exceed, right? We've seen in the past, I don't know if they're doing it right now. No, they are doing it. We see Malice siding the Radiant Typhoon cards for going first. So they're doing a lot of that stuff. There was one really cool thing I saw as well from Luca. I don't know if the deck list is here. I think he posted it on Twitter, but Luca was siding Radiant Typhoon Crocea against Radiant Typhoon, which I thought was really funny. Because he just put in, like, I think he was playing Magistus Draco Tail, and then just played like the Radiant Typhoon quick play spell, MST, and Crocea in the side deck, so that when you go second against Radiant Typhoon and they activate a quick play spell, you just summon Crocea and go +2, which I think is also kind of funny. But I don't know. Radiant Typhoon is a really, really cool deck, but I just feel like you're exposing yourself to some variance. I gotta say, my favorite thing with Radiant Typhoon by far is Sheena. I think Sheena is such a strong and fun card. So, yeah. Oh, yeah. I think all things considered, the deck underperformed slightly, but still did okay. 2 Mitsu in top 16 is not bad. I think in hindsight, the last ban list really was pretty solid, because even the decks that I felt like they hit pretty hard still somehow survived. I mean, Yummy literally won one of the tournaments and is still showing up in these top cuts. You know, we've got it won YCS Richmond. It got second at YCS Mexico. And we had a couple of Yummies in top 16 in Europe as well. So Yummy, by all means, is not dead. I guess we'll have to wait and see how this develops, because one of the things that I feel like would happen now after this YCS is people will probably start playing more Nibiru. This is the number 1 takeaway from this YCS, is that Nibiru should still be in people's decks, because like, I didn't play Nibiru because I played Sky Striker, but had I played Draco Tail, I would have played Nib, I would have at least considered siding it. Or rather, my last list before the tournament that I would have played had Nib in the side deck, because I wanted to respect those types of decks in the side deck at least. And I don't even think Nibiru is that bad against the modern, like the new version of Draco Tail. It's fine. It's not crazy, but it's okay. If they open Albaz, they'll play into it. But yeah. Are you the only striker player? I mean, I think so. Yeah, it was a really there's one in top 64 actually. In Europe, we had a fellow striker enjoyer in top 64. It was Steve. Made top 64 with Sky Striker. Dinka Bui also played striker, but I think Dinka Bui didn't make top 64. He was close, but not quite. But yeah. How is Malice not dead? Dude, I don't know, man. I really thought in their defense, because people are saying like, oh, why can't they hit Malice properly? I think I also thought it was gone. To be fair, I think they wanted to kill it, and I think they thought it was enough, but it turns out we were all wrong, and I was wrong too. I thought it was dead, but it apparently isn't. Oh yeah. Danilo was sounding the alarm. Yeah, I saw that. I didn't want to believe it. But I gotta admit the deck is not dead. And Mitsu too, by the way. That's the thing, right? Like a lot of the decks that people were like complaining about that they hit too hard on the ban list, like Yami and maybe even Mitsu. I don't think anyone was complaining about Habakiri to 1, to be fair. But Mitsu, and this is the most important thing. The deck that's performing now is pure Mitsu. This is how it should have been always. Get rid of them stupid bridges, okay? Let people play pure Mitsurugi. It's completely fine. No one has ever complained about playing against pure Mitsurugi. Every time I see a Mitsurugi card activated, I hope it's pure Mitsurugi. I want it to be pure Mitsurugi. People have for sure. I mean, yeah. Okay, no one in their right mind has complained about pure Mitsurugi. Let me phrase it like that, because yes, you will find someone who has complained about it. Obviously, yes. Should have phrased that better. Well, yeah. And it's the somewhat annoying thing is that it's the same thing that's happening with like Radiant Typhoon right now. It's like, okay, pure Radiant Typhoon is a strong deck and everything, but like the stuff that's winning is the one that's using Radiant Typhoon to do yummy Tri-Brigade combo, or make the deck even combo heavier in that way. And that's like, okay, cool. The last time I complained was probably because my opponent got Habakir with Prosperity. Sure. Imagine having proper locks. It's kind of weird, but like, yeah, I don't know. Yeah. I think to an extent this is also fine, realistically, as long as the deck has distinct weaknesses. Like for example, this deck, right? You might think like, oh, Josh is gonna find this deck incredibly cringe because it's like a slop combination of Tri-Brigade, Yami, and Radiant Typhoon. I don't feel that way about this deck. Like, I think this is a combo deck through and through, and it is not my style of deck, but I do not hate the fact that it exists, because I feel like this deck has reasonable counterplay, and I think if people expect it in the format, they can properly prepare for it, and there's enough ways to like outmaneuver it. I don't think that combo decks as a whole shouldn't exist, in case that wasn't clear. I think it's completely okay for different playstyles to exist. What I want is for there to be a balance between those strategies. You know, those strategies need to all be at roughly similar power levels for it to be okay, in my opinion. I have my worst time in a format is when there's only combo decks and the combo decks are all significantly stronger than everything else, And so I'm forced to play a combo deck, or I'm forced to play a complete underdog deck, and I'm going to have a really hard time against all the combo decks in the format. If this deck is just one of many decks in a format that is just a little more combo heavier than the others, but therefore also has a harder time into stuff like Fuwa, Purulia, and Nibiru, that's fine. At least the way I feel about it. So it's not that I don't want the playstyle to exist at all. I think it's okay. I as much as I want my playstyle to be represented, I think it's important that the combo playstyle in modern Yu-Gi-Oh is also represented. And I genuinely, I look at this deck and I have no issue with it. Even if it's not my style. Because we're not even trying to floodgate the opponent out of the game. There's like a world of difference between this deck and like K9 Crystron. All right, there's no cards in here that negate your opponent's hand traps in Engine. Of course, there is Called by an Ash Blossom, which is a different topic. But there's no like, I make Ripper, I negate your hand traps. I make Ripper, I punish your hand traps. I make a completely unbreakable board with spell cancel that locks you out of the game, you know, like, or whatever. And they're not giving the opponent artifact Mjolnir. Like, it is just a combo deck, you know, but there's no like punish hand traps, negate hand traps, put up floodgates in this deck, right? Totem Bird is kind of strong though. I mean, I'm not saying it's not strong. Like, yes, it's not my favorite play style and it is strong, but it's not necessarily toxic. Pure Mitsu is the best deck in the OCG right now. Do you think it's not too much? The new cards over there mostly help consistently, not sealing. The Demise Ritual monster definitely helps sealing because it gives you a third Mitsurugi Ritual per turn. That's not just consistency. That is definitely sealing. But yeah. I mean, I guess that's the most interesting part about this whole thing is like, where do we go from here, right? Because I think right now, from my experience, I experienced this YCS as a very positive one, and not just because of my own performance being pretty solid and something I'm happy with, but just the format in general. The Yu-Gi-Oh that was played this weekend, from what I've seen and what I've experienced, was pretty good. Whether it was the Vanquish Souls, the Draco Tails, the Radiant Typhoons, the Yummies, there's a lot of the Mitsurugis. There's a lot of decks here that I think represent a lot of what I think is good Yu-Gi-Oh. Some are more combo heavy, some are less combo heavy, but in general, I think the game is going in a really solid direction. It is not perfect by any means. I've seen games end to a single dimension shifter. I've seen Dimensional Fissure. I even played different Dimension Ground myself, and I'm also seeing some combo decks that are stronger than what I think they should be, like K9 Crystron, even though it's not performing, which I'm happy about, but still. It's not like it's the perfect format, but it's a lot of the things that are happening right now in Yu-Gi-Oh are pretty awesome. I've had a really good time, and I'm really looking forward what's ahead in 2026. So for now, I guess the takeaway from this is that Draco Tail Branded is both the most expected, but also for good reason considered to be one of the most powerful decks in the format. It had very solid performances at all 3 YCSs, even though it wasn't able to take one down. But I would still consider, like, let's say I was going to regionals and I just wanted to go a solid X2 to make sure I bring home some solid amount of Worlds points. I think Draco Tail is like the deck to do that. So that's kind of like the position of Draco Tail. It's like the consistent and strong deck that everyone is expecting. But then I do think we're going to see a surge from this YCS. We're definitely going to see a surge in Vanquish Souls, Malice, and Yummy decks as well, because it's now been proven that they are at least capable of performing again. So if that means people are going to start playing cards like Nibiru again, then those decks could struggle as well, you know? So I guess we'll have to wait and see where that goes. Burgik, thank you for the 30 months. Also, congrats on the, what was it, top 8 or top 4? Either way, congratulations. Will you co-stream YCS Sydney? They announced the stream. I know I've put it into my calendar. I don't know if I know I have a regional on that weekend. I know I have a regional on the Saturday of the YCS Sydney, but I think I might stream day 2. You were right about Megistus. Before the event, a lot of people were talking about it being more viable. The Megistus performance does not surprise me in the slightest. I think it is a strong deck, but there's no real reason to play it. Like, people will always yearn for more ceiling, but in certain situations it's just not worth it. Like, quite frankly, I think if you are a Dracotail player and you want something with more ceiling, then you should not be a Dracotail player. I think it's simple as that. I think it's completely okay to want to play a combo deck, but I don't think it is the best thing in the world to do to turn Dracotail, out of all things, into a combo deck. Like, some decks have lower ceiling than other decks, and they have other advantages, like being good into Fuwa, for example. If that's important to you, if you want a good deck into Fuwa that's more like mid-rangey and makes less powerful boards, then you can play Dracotail. If you want to play a higher ceiling combo deck that has sacrifices like like now weaker into Fuwa and Nib and whatever, but you have a higher ceiling and more like combo potential, you can play stuff like this that doesn't have 3 trap cards in the main deck, for example, as requirements or whatever, so by all means, I think Branded Dracotail with Megistus is a solid deck, and I think Pack did well with it. But I personally, I think this is more of a... Pack got top 32. I think Pack... this is more of a Pack performance than the actual deck performance, realistically. I think Pack could have done well with other decks as well. But yeah, I don't know. I haven't really looked into the numbers yet, but there is a couple of Spentas here in this overview. I see 2 here. But for the most part, the overwhelming majority, and it's not close, of good performing Dracotail decks were all just Albaz. No Spenta. There's a cool tune down here. What? That's interesting to see. Oh yeah, they have Zalen now. The last time I played this deck, we didn't have Zalen yet. Ooh. Kind of want to give this deck a shot in the TCG at some point in the upcoming weeks. Am I weird? Guys, you have to tell me. I'm feeling something, and I don't know if it's weird or not to feel the way I'm feeling right now, because one deck that I kind of wanted to play throughout my testing process for YCS Dortmund, but I didn't end up having the time to properly look into it, is Branded. I kind of have the urge to become a Brandy for a while. Is that weird right now? Because I've never really been one, but right now the new Albaz is really fun, and I feel a little weird about just playing Dracotail all the time, because I mean it's not like it's getting boring, but I kind of like it is very standard. But it was the profile that we watched last week of Branded topping a regional, where it was just like a really grindy version that was closer to 40 cards, and it doesn't play the floodgates at all anymore. There was no Sanctifier shenanigans or whatever. It was just good old Branded grind game, have like 58 activations in the end phase, and then outgrinded with the opponent. I thought that looked fun. I thought about like trying that deck a little bit. But yeah. Maybe. Sanctifier is such a fun card when it's not used for bullshit. Yes, I agree with that. I think Sanctifier is also one of the funniest, one of the funnest things about playing Branded Fusion in Dracotail is that you just make Sanctifier, but you do nothing crazy with it. I guess some people are doing stuff like Christia, but realistically, most of the time I see Sanctifier at the moment, it's to like revive Frixel on the opponent's turn, or bring back Albaz, or bring back Lucius, and I think that stuff's just awesome. But yeah. All right. One thing I want to take a quick look at now is an MBT video about Genesys format. And this is a topic that really interests me. And I also am interested to hear your guys' input on this. Because this was, of course, the first time that they applied the new Genesys structure at a YCS, which is something that, as a fan of Genesys, which I do consider myself a fan of the Genesys format, I do play it, and I think it is awesome. I was unsure how to feel about how Genesys was handled at this YCS and how it will be handled in the future. And just for context, I don't know if he elaborates in this video, but the way it's been done at this YCS now is that there was a Genesys YCS happening at the same time as the main event, almost at the same time. At least I can only speak for Europe. I do not know how it was in NA, but for us, the Genesys, it was called the Genesys Proto YCS, started on Saturday, basically after like 3 rounds of the main event. Like they started at like 1 p.m. I think. So basically, technically, if you had a really rough start to your tournament and you went like 0-2 or 0-3 and then you dropped, you could have played the Genesys main event. Otherwise, if you were playing day 1, you could not play Genesys. Which on the one hand, I really liked the fact that Genesys got the attention of a full tournament instead of just having like side events, basically. But I also wasn't happy about having to decide, basically, right? I wasn't happy about like, okay, if you choose the main event, you don't get a chance to play Genesys. So I was really curious about how Genesys was received, and I was from my first impression, I was positively surprised about the reception of Genesys this YCS. I've talked to multiple friends who have chosen Genesys over the main event, and they had a good time. They had a good time at the Genesys Proto YCS, and they were like, you know what? I actually prefer Genesys format over the current TCG format. I want to choose Genesys over the YCS, which is something that I was a little bit worried about, because I was a little scared that maybe no one was going to play Genesys. Everyone was going to play Advanced Constructed main event. But there was a couple of people who actually went like, no, I think Genesys is better than Advanced Constructed. I'm going to play Genesys. And I think that's good for Genesys. I think that is good. And I think there are things in Genesys that are better than Advanced Constructed. I'm not saying it is better in general, but because I do enjoy Advanced Constructed a lot at the moment as well. But I think there are things in Genesys that are awesome. And I think it's worth exploring. I think it's worth trying. And I think it is worth considering. And if they keep doing this for every YCS, there could be formats in the future where I can see myself playing Genesys over Advanced Constructed. But I want to hear from MBT, because MBT, I think, played in Genesys as well for NA instead of the main event. And I think that's interesting. Let's go.
Asmodeus. Let's talk about Genesys format. So this past weekend was the 300th YCS, and the proving ground for Genesys format at large-scale tournaments. Previously, Genesys has been available at YCSs as an invitational. You would play a pod, and the first, or sometimes first and second, players in that pod would move on to a secondary tournament that happened a little bit later. At the 300th YCS, they did something a little bit different. They hosted a main event at the same time as the advanced main event, in which individuals could play Genesys format in lieu of Advanced. These proto-YCSs were conducted like YCSs and attracted pretty reasonable crowds. But they were also the first opportunity for people who had played Genesys to play like a reasonable number of rounds. Previously, to get to an invitational, you had to go like 3-1 or 4-0, followed by just winning a top 64.
And this is a big deal, right? Like what they had previously was obviously a solid tournament or a solid side event structure, but realistically, from a competitive standpoint, playing a top 8 bracket to qualify for a single elimination tournament is not the greatest experience. You know, it's fine, but it is not like it's not the same as playing like 10 or 11 rounds or whatever. Oh, yeah. Hey, Josh, just wanted to say I really enjoyed our match. It was fun playing you, and we had some good chance. Yeah, congrats on, what was it, top 4 in the end? That's very nice.
Bracket. Now you had to sit down and play.
It was a good match. We talked about it earlier in my tournament report. I told them you played well. I couldn't do anything.
11, 12 rounds of Genesys. So people started labbing. What's more, the format is now old enough that metagames are starting to develop. And I'm excited to say that alongside myself, other content creators are putting in the work of helping people figure out what is good and what is bad. As a result, this is the first tournament that I think tested Genesys format's staying power and not just its ability to be a weird dalliance.
So because the question is probably going to come up, and I do think it's an interesting point, I took the effort to try and find out how many people entered the Genesys events, which at the European YCS, I think it was capped at 256 players. And they did not hit the cap of 256, but they got somewhat close. I think it was almost 200 players in Europe and over 200 in the US, which is not bad considering it's the first time it happened. Of course, if you are a fan of Genesys format, you would love it to just completely cap out at 256 and everyone wants to and everyone wanted to play and not even everyone got a ticket. But honestly, it was pretty close to full cap, which I think is solid. I will say I was pessimistic about it because from my perspective, I didn't like the fact that it was happening simultaneously and you had to choose. And I was ready for people to choose, or I was expecting most people like myself to choose the advanced constructed main event. But I was positively surprised by those numbers.
During times that the TCG sucks balls. And how'd it go? Well, pretty good. For me. I ended the event 14th place. That's right, top 16, which would in a civilized country be considered a top. But unfortunately, all tops are now top 8, so bubbled out again. But still, like my best performance in a YCS ever. I think I'd be remiss if I didn't milk it a little bit. So as a result, we're going to walk through my deck and its choices. We're going to talk about the wider Genesys metagame and what you should be concerned about if you aim to play the format.
The reason we're watching this is because MBT made a Twitter thread on this, and I read through it, and I thought it was a lot of interesting stuff. So I hope it's also in here.
What the experience of playing it at a YCS was like, and we're going to talk about some point changes I would like to see in an upcoming format. That's right, we're just doing anything. This is just the Genesys video, big Genesys video with a bunch of crap in it. Let's start with the deck. So here's the list, and it is Cool Tune. Not super surprising to people who've played the format. I think this deck
Gravity
is extremely
Collapse.
good. It's very flexible. It's hard to pin down. There are a couple of decks in the format, Monarch and Galaxy Regenesis in particular, that I think automatically win if you don't draw hand traps, and this is a deck that gets to play a lot of hand traps as well as access some in-engine.
What is this site? I don't know. I've never seen it.
Of one of the incredibly powerful cards released in BitBro, Zaylin the Shackled
Genuinely
Dragon.
have no idea.
I'll walk you through the choices that I made. First and foremost, 3 Rico, 3 Mix is not particularly surprising. 1 Red Nova is not super standard. People are usually on 2 or 3, but this card excels in multiples a lot more if you're playing the Herald of Orange Light package, which I wish I had. I was playing it until the 11th hour, but I cut it for 3 copies of DD Crow and some different choices with respect to the
DD Crow seems kind of ass in Genesys right now. From what I've heard, it's probably a good side deck card, but like it doesn't seem great against Cool Tune and Vanquish.
We've got a driver for some deltas later on. 3 Synchro Overtake, 3 Cool Tune Synchro, 3 JJ Cool Tune, 2 Duelist Genesys. Duelist Genesys could probably go up to 3, and JJ Cool Tune could probably go down to 2.
I like it. I like 3 Duelist Genesys in Cool Tune and Genesys.
Synchro Overtake and a Duelist Genesys.
I don't like 3 field spells. Other than that, it seems fine.
I did love playing this card at multiples. I know some individuals are only playing 1. I found the additional copies made hands way better because then it opens up a sort of flexibility for your trackmaker search, and more importantly allows you to play through things, functioning sort of as a way to trade for a 1-to-1 hand trap in hands where you expect your opponent is going to interrupt you. I liked it a great deal. 3 Effect Veiler, now that Trinities go at the end of the format. 3 Cyframe Gear Delta, the Q and Clip that are both pointed. 3 Ghost Ogre and Snow Rabbit, and 3 Ghost Mourner and Moonlit Chill, which is not a particularly good card this format. I think it's kind of poorly positioned.
I found the same thing. When I played Mourner at locals in this deck, I felt like Mourner was kind of
the
bad.
Ultimate Slayer package, and then
I found good spots for Ghost Ogre and Veiler, but Mourner kind of sucked.
Zaylin the Shackled Dragon. Usually in the dark, my end board would be Remix mechanics, plus Zaylin, which you can make off of one card, or with better hands, like an up track maker that could then be converted into something like a Loudness War. Any situation where I could have Zaylin on board with like a clip in hand or a Cool Tune Synchro set drastically improves the ability of this card to do anything.
Can you play around Nibiru with Zaylin in this deck? Is there a way to chain something to Nibiru?
Doomsy. This is a great way to tribute over Deoctarus. Scared about Super Quantum. This outs Magnum. There's a number of decks that just like end up making one too many guys, and this is a guy that then you don't have to worry about. Artifact Lancia was something I was off and on over and over again, and I'm so happy I was on. It is a card that does something against some of the top decks, and for that reason deserves a place over cards that frequently
it is a
do
card
nothing
that does
against
something.
a lot of the top decks, like DD.
I know. You got me. I'm in.
This in the most frequently in testing against Monarch because it's a mechanism that keeps them off.
I'm convinced.
Like Pantheism plays. You have to be kind of careful with it though, because if you activate it in response to like a Pantheism pitching something relevant, then they can maybe make use of the something relevant. I got myself in hot water a couple of times because my opponent would go Master Play and I'd immediately Lancia, then they'd be able to send the trap card, which gets them access to like the Zaborg summon on my turn. That said, that's preferable to them putting in a Pantheism if you don't think that you can get them on the crackback, which usually you can't because decks like that have a lot of survivability. 3 Ultimate Slayer, 3 Cosmic Cyclone, 1 Cool Tune Playlist, and 3 Gravity Collapse. This is in the main a lot of the time. I didn't love it in the main. Gravity Collapse here was in almost every Cool Tune list. The board plan in the dark would be I would just take out the Cyframe Gear Delta and the Driver when going first and board in these 4. Gravity Collapse was the worst card in my deck. I know a lot of individuals, specifically Kevin, were champing at the bit to get this card pointed to 100, and to be clear, I think that should happen. We'll talk about it a little bit later, but all of the top decks have a way to play around this. Think about Draco Tail. It doesn't commit to a summon until it is well past the point of no return. Archmage can just turbo Graflair, who special.
Yeah, there are ways to play around it, but that card says your opponent cannot summon a monster until the end of the turn, so
by way of an effect, and then can
oh no, man.
Collapse.
I was hoping for more of a like can we talk about the experience? I don't care about the Cool Tune deck. I'm sorry. I love the Cool Tune deck, but that's not why I'm watching the video right now.
So the Genesys event started a little later than Advanced, which was interesting to say the least. It meant that if you had a card that had people who were in Advanced and people who were in Genesys, one of them just kind of had to wait around for what was supposed to be a half hour, but ended up being more like an hour. The Genesys event started at 10:30 on Saturday and went through 7 rounds of Swiss, followed by 4 rounds of Day 2 and a cut to top 8 on Sunday. This, first and foremost, I would say is probably wrong. I don't know why it panned out like this, but doesn't it make more sense to be 8 rounds Day 1 than 3 rounds Day 2? That's just much more analogous to how a normal YCS works. Like, why would you play more than half of another Saturday on Sunday? It was very strange. I will say the vibes were immaculate. I say this a lot of the time about a lot of events that I go to, but everyone was there having fun. Everyone was super excited to be playing Genesys, and importantly, everyone was playing meta. Looking around, I expected some people to be like, oh, I played Blackwing back in the day, so I brought Blackwing. And there just wasn't very much of that at all, especially post like round 2. It was individuals who by and large were playing the top decks in the format and playing them very capably. I saw maybe one deck that I wasn't super prepared for, and that's a good thing. It's fantastic to know that there is a meter stick by which you can engage with the format. It isn't just people throwing things at a wall and seeing what.
Okay, this is what this is going to. I was like, okay, because this is something that for some people could be a negative thing, that like people are playing meta, but I think this is something to understand as well. Like, no matter what, if you want people to take this seriously, then there is always going to be a meta that develops. And I mean, Genesys, at least from my perspective, is not meant to be a super casual format. Maybe in the beginning stages or maybe at locals, but even like locals is always more casual than a YCS. Like if you're showing up to a Genesys YCS, I think you should expect people to take it seriously and have at least, I mean, not everyone is playing tier 1 decks. I remember, I think he said in his Twitter post, he said in 11 rounds he played against 10 different decks. So meta is still a very wide term here, you know, like he's talking just about decks that are like not just a pile of cards, basically.
sticks. As a final note about the actual experience, I will say that I think the matches that they pulled up on camera were not fantastic. My understanding was that they were pulling them based on table numbers, but that ends up getting hairy. As you saw, the Super Quant woman was back to back, and they could have done a little more to screen for decks that had already been on camera. Like, I didn't get to watch the stream, but a lot of people online were whining about the frequency that Cool Tune and Radiant Typhoon were on stream.
What? I have a question about this since I wasn't home to experience any of the streams. How was this handled? Was this like a... Did they have frequent Genesys matches on stream? Did they have... Were they replacing the main events feature matches? Were they in between the main event? Because I feel like the way it should be done, at least the way I feel about it, if they are aiming to make this its own YCS that people care about, I think they should have 2 streams. Quite frankly, I think if they care about this format and they want to promote it and everything, I think they need to do it has to have its own stream. Maybe you can like do some cross promotions, right? Maybe you can have like, okay, now maybe the finals can be all on the same stream, or like the top cut can be all on the same stream. Like let's say I think that's how Pokemon does it sometimes, is like for certain big tournaments you have like separate streams on the Saturday, and then for the finals you have one stream, right? I think they call it Championship Sunday, where it's like all the finals for every game and every age division are happening one after another on one stream. And I think that could be a cool way to do it. Is like, but ultimately I think they should aim for Genesys to have its own coverage for their YCS.
Which I guess would be frustrating if you may have seen those already in the advanced portion. As you can see in the top cut, those decks were around, but weren't nearly as prevalent as coverage made it seem. Like, would it kill them to try and get the Doomsy player on earlier? I don't know if they did. On that note, let's talk about the top decks. First up is Monarch. This shouldn't surprise anyone. I expected this to be the best deck moving in, and it was certainly up there. Monarch has kind of 2 diverging builds. The first is the one that's been featured on this channel that includes Zaborg. I think the 12th place player was also playing this strategy. This deck aims to use Zaborg, the big-ass Mega Monarch, to pop a light monster, usually itself or Aether, then mill 8 cards from its own extra deck, including enough cards to just overwhelm the opponent in advantage. Drawing off Garura, setting up multiple activations of Jurak Meteor, like that's impossible to beat through. Moreover, it also gets to choose the cards to send from the opponent's extra deck, which means you can cut an opponent playing a real deck off of everything. The other...
That sounds like Mega Zaborg should be 100 points to me personally. that really sounds like it should be 100 points.
Build of the deck is the Honko Chow build that did well at the YG Organization tournament. That deck plays Garoom, the Wind Vassal, and Mithra to set up a line in...
Turn on tribute summon monster. You control to the hand. Special card from the hand. Cancel personal extra deck. This card's tributed for tribute summon. Add a monster. Okay.
In which you not only Erebus a couple of times, but Thestalos the remaining cards out of an opponent's hand.
Oh, it's a
has
hand
a
loop.
Super consistent 5-card hand loop, but after being interrupted, can pivot down to a lower number and a domain, so they can domain lock you out of the game. That said, the winningest Monarch strategy, the one that I think got second in Swiss, was not doing either of those things. It played 3 copies of Pot of Greed and elected to forego either domain lock or like a stupid Zaborg FTK or hand loop.
That's awesome.
I spoke at length to the pilot, and basically they told me they were Erebusing twice in order to get the opponent down to 4 cards, and then just setting up a Monarch board. The Monarch board is a couple of interactions. You have the ability with the Monarch's Master Plan to tribute on your opponent's turn, which is good, of course. Aether probably needs no introduction, but mostly it's just impossible to kill through the Monarch board. They have the Aether summon, so that's 2 bodies right there. Prime Monarch in the graveyard, which is an additional body. The Monarch's Master Plan permits you to tribute over it, which isn't an additional body, but is interruption. If a Tessera gets into the mix, well, the Tessera goes to the yard, and that's going to summon out an Adia, which is going to summon out an Eidos. And of course, if you ever perform a tribute summon, then Big Eidos comes back from the graveyard. This is like 9 bodies to get through, which is impossible for anything in Genesys. Then on your turn, you automatically win because nothing can beat Stormforce 4th Erebus. I like this deck a great deal. I think the version of it that is not playing any of the bullshit is a lot of fun to have in the format. Next up is Cool Tune. I don't think this surprised anyone. This is a deck that has a very low point total associated with it, benefits off of playing low pointed hand traps, and is new, therefore the cards are a little pushed. Cool Tune is not really seeing success in the TCG, so I think it's good that there is a place where this deck feels at home. I see a lot of people whining that like it's tier 2 in the TCG and why is it playable here? I don't know where you guys are getting your information. This deck is not tier 2 in
Bro,
the
this deck's like tier 8 in the TCG right now.
TCG. Not yet. There's a fun push-pull with this deck in that your hand trap lineup matters a lot when considering this strategy. A lot of situations where like a Skullmeister or a DD Crow can do a lot of work against something like a Remix. But of course, the card that absolutely hoses this deck is Ghost Bell, and a lot of people elected to play this card for that reason, and were very successful with it. I think as people get more familiar with what this deck actually does, it will drop off in terms of like top tieredness. Once they start boarding in kaijus and thinking critically about board states, things will change. For instance, I played the Duelist on Super Quant in a late round, and in game 2, she started reading Zaylin, and I was like, oh no, she's reading Zaylin. And after that, never built a chain ever again, and just won the game off that. Next up is Radiant Typhoon. This deck, like Cool Tune, is a newer archetype. It is drastically unpointed relative to its power level. It just got a cool new card, and it's seeing a smattering of success in the TCG, though in a very
Oh no,
context.
she's reading
Radiant Typhoon has some
Zaylin.
weaknesses in Genesis that it doesn't in the TCG. The Link Varun really solves like the where did the mandate go problem. That's not to say this deck isn't incredibly powerful, and given the Radiant Typhoon has already been powerful at least once in Genesis, I would not be surprised if the update absolutely eviscerates it. We got to talk about Sheena too. Oh my god, Sheena's so good. After that is Draco Tail. This is the one I see the least defense for. This probably should be pointed much higher. It is at least a little frustrating that the deck that I think unquestionably is the best in the TCG is also a top tier strategy in Genesis. This is also one of those decks where like the cards that beat it really beat it. Like people are boarding non-fusion area. Obviously that's really good. And sometimes it sort of loses to itself. You can draw a couple of Urgula and look at a hand that just does nothing and think, why am I playing this? But when it goes off, it's functionally unbeatable. Like there is very little that stands up to it. After that is Archmage, another new deck that is drastically underpointed. Not too much to say about this one that hasn't already been said. I think this deck is a welcome addition to the format. I think it's cool that the deck exists in the capacity it does, though it is sort of playable in the TCG in terms of Archmage Canine. The way the deck functions in Genesis is fundamentally different. And finally, Punk Psychic, I think, is a top strategy as well. This is a deck that saw no play in the TCG, and it's not really hard to see why. It's a big, sexy combo deck that takes 1,000,000 damage and loses to Nibiru. But here, Nibiru isn't really guaranteed. You play the new Punk stuff, but you also play the Banish Psychics that came out like a couple of sets ago. You play a board that is super layered, super intense, doesn't really lose to one piece of board breakery. Like, you can fire off an Ulti Slayer and trade for 2 things, but they'll usually have 4 points of interaction. And they can also go into Pep, which is impossible for a significant amount of decks to out. Under that, there are a number of decks that I think are at least playable. Doom Z, playing 1 copy of Premature Burial, I think is one of those decks that sort of justifies Genesis, using a really old card to benefit a really new archetype in a way that just can't ever be done in the TCG. That deck got second at the American Proto YCS. Really unbelievable.
That is kind of awesome.
Individual. Onomat is apparently still around. Same person who
No!
won the last Invitational, topped with it this time.
How?
Who needed Dota Warrior, I guess. White Forest is a deck that's just sort of perennially around in the format. It got a lot as Droll was removed from the list of cards people were considering, but it does still lose to other traps. Exorcister, I think, is really good. It's not represented in either of the top 8s, but I think it is.
This is crazy to me. How does Exorcister not top? That deck is insane in Genesis, isn't it?
Powerful, and probably the premier Dimension Shifter deck because it can just add it back to the hand. On the subject of decks that make a damn good use out of Dimension Shifter, Goatee, I was surprised to see very little of. There were some in the top 16, and the tool that this deck has gotten recently is the first Penguin, which
75
I think
points
pushes it over the
engine?
edge.
Oh.
In testing, I never beat Goatee. Finally, Galaxy Regenesis was also represented in the top 16, but of course not the top 8, so no lists are out. That, I think, is comparable to Monarch insofar as if you go first, you automatically win. But a significant amount of people integrated lines from that deck into their normal deck, utilizing Surfacing Big Jaws in order to get to, like, the Mr. Galaxy man. On that note, it's a good pivot to what I think should happen with the points. So the first is that some decks and engines are obviously drastically underpointed. Cool Tune, Archmage, Doom Z, Draco Tail, Radiant Typhoon, Exosister, Monarch, the Surfacing Big Jaws package, all of these could get points associated with them. And I think will. Like, Eidos is the most obvious 10 I've ever seen in my life. Medius is a 10 for sure, and I'm not just saying that because he's a twink.
Medius?
As Exosister and Goatee rise in playability as well, I hope they revisit
He does this on purpose, right? Mispronounce cards?
Dimension Shifter. I hope it goes the way of the Droll and
think he does
Lockbird
this
and
on
ends up
purpose.
being like prohibitively expensive. Maybe they splash a singleton copy. I really don't like that card. And I don't think there's sufficient counterplay to it in this format. You can Lancia, but that's not going to help you on your own turn. And I think we do need to have a discussion about banning individual cards. First and foremost, I hate to be like this, but Trinity format has already done the work for you. This format that's been in development for a decade has basically boxed out anything that could even remotely resemble a floodgate. And I'm pretty sure Konami already cross-referenced to the list because a lot of the garbage from that list is 100 pointed in Genesys, like Angel 07. But keep going. Like, there's no reason to keep poisonous winds in the format until it becomes a problem. Non-fusion area could go. Soundproofed can go. Like, these don't make fun games happen. But there are 5 cards I think absolutely must be pointed at 100 pretty much immediately. The first, as mentioned, are Soundproofed and Non-Fusion Area. These cut off entire mechanisms of play, and I don't think they have a place in a game that is going to go to turn 5. Like, it's not fun to play Find the Cosmic Cyclone or Die if you're Draco Tail. It's not fun to play Wait It Out if you're Cool Toon. Speaking of Cool Toon, Gravity Collapse. So I mentioned in my list that Gravity Collapse was the worst performing card in my deck, which is true.
I think it's understandable that they didn't point every single floodgate. Like, we did this on stream like years ago where I made a fun ban list like thought experiment where we put every single card that resembles a floodgate on the ban list. And like, I understand they don't want to bloat the point list like that, but then at the very least, you have to start putting points on the stuff that people are actually playing. Like, I think it's okay to say like, okay, you know what, we don't want to put points on like 200 cards extra to what we already have, because that's going to be too confusing when people look at the list. But as soon as people start playing these cards, you have to do something. Like, the fact that Dimensional Fissure, this is not even just true for the TCG, but also for Genesys. The fact that Dimensional Fissure is still 0 points is insane. The fact that Shifter is on 10 and not higher is insane. And the fact that people start playing Gravity Collapse whenever there's a Synchro deck, and people start playing Non-Fusion Area as soon as there's a Fusion deck, they need to do stuff about that.
But that's
even if it bloats the list a little bit. Like, they need to be more aggressive with this sort of stuff.
Of the decks that are currently popular. All the top decks having ways around this card doesn't mean that there won't be a different format in which decks won't have a way around this card, or that a different synchro deck with more ability to just lose guys doesn't just start splashing this. I will admit, if this card resolves on your opponent's normal summon, you do just straight up win. That's not fun. That's not like fun at all. In fact, I think there's a number of cards that automatically win you the game going first that need to go, which brings me to my next card, Mistaken Arrest. Card seeing a lot of play. It is really frustrating that Droll and Lockbird's most annoying use case is doing your whole combo, your opponent takes an action, and you go Droll and Lockbird. You can do the same thing with Mistaken Arrest. Sure, it prevents you from popping off on your opponent's turn, but if you've got a full board and setup and follow-up, who cares? And finally, I want to talk specifically about Dimensional Barrier. So I've talked a lot about, is Macro a floodgate in the past? If Konami believes that Macro is not a floodgate, well, then it doesn't really matter. If Konami believes that banishing everything doesn't constitute a floodgate, they're not going to apply the 100 points that floodgates usually get to it. And I think at this point we can definitively say they don't. They think that's okay. But Dimensional Fissure is a little different. Firing Dimensional Fissure turn 1 isn't just Macrocosmos, it's also Called by the Grave. In the TCG, people have been experimenting with Dimensional Fissure going first, and it's caught on a little, but in Genesys, it's a lot better. In the TCG, if your opponent leads Dimensional Barrier, you can still Mulcharmy Foolos them, Perulia them, Ash Blossom them. In Genesys, the suite of hand traps is so incredibly truncated that you really can't do a whole lot of anything. The 2 premier free hand traps in the format, DD Crow and Skullmeister, are useless under Dimensional Fissure. I mean, DD Crow's got to go to the graveyard, of course, but obviously you're not going to be activating an effect in the graveyard if there's no graveyard, and there's nothing to banish from the graveyard if there's no graveyard. Keep moving down the list and you check out the 3-pointers, Ghost Ogre and Snow Rabbit, and Ghost Mourner and Moonlit Chill. Mourner still works, but Ghost Ogre has to go to the graveyard in order to trigger, which means she's offline as well. Keep moving to the 5s, Ghost Bell and Haunted Mansion shows up, and while this card can be activated under Dimensional Fissure, it won't. Like, you're not going to be banishing cards from the graveyard. There's nothing in the graveyard. And finally, if you move to the 7s, the big one that sees a lot of play is Veiler, who has to go to the graveyard in order to activate. So if you slam down a Dimensional Barrier, you can pretty much stop playing around anything.
This is a really good point. Like, in this regard, if those are the most popular hand traps in Genesys format right now, then Dimensional Fissure is not just a floodgate, but also like a magical mid-breaker field type card where you just don't have to worry about a really big portion of the hand traps anymore.
but Nibiru and Ghost Mourner, a card with pretty limited applicability. And that's bad. Like that, like Called by the Grave is pointed to shit. This is just Called by the Grave. So, in conclusion, I had a great time playing Genesys. In its current state, it definitely ranks in the top formats of all time for me, which is crazy. I've played like all of them. But I can't deny that it came at a little bit of an inopportune moment. The potential moment for Genesys was if it took off during a period when the TCG was languishing, when people were just kind of rolling their eyes and getting through events, waiting for a release that would finally make it fun and playable. But the TCG's really good right now. So the question becomes, if the format is good, do we need a place to escape? And that's where I'd like to reconceptualize Genesys. I don't want it to be this liminal format that you play while you wait for a better one to emerge in the real card game. I think this thing only succeeds if it is good in its own right, if it is the modern to Magic's standard, or vice versa. Me personally, despite the fact that the TCG is good, despite the fact I have cards for it, despite the fact that I'm practiced enough I would have loved to enter, I was very proud to play Genesys at the 300th YCS, and I had a crazy good time doing so. Of the games I played, almost all of them were incredibly back and forth, meaty games with a lot of decision points. There was a lot of room for players to express their individual skill and be rewarded for it. There were so few times when the cards I complained about above even mattered. Like I said, in something like 30 games I played, I think I gravity collapsed once in a game that may have mattered. If you are looking for an escape from the TCG, I really would urge you not to try out Genesys. I think you should be playing it if you love Yu-Gi-Oh! And want more. As a final...
I think this is a wonderful point, because as someone who's basically played as much Yu-Gi-Oh! TCG in my life as humanly possible, Genesys format is, I do think it is distinctly different from Advanced Constructed in a lot of different ways, and I do not look at Genesys as a replacement or something that I can escape to whenever the Advanced Constructed format sucks or whatever. Genuinely, the Advanced Constructed format at the moment is really, really cool and awesome. But so is Genesys, but in different ways. Genesys offers a different type of environment. The power level and balancing and just the fundamentals of the game are different. It is not like Time Wizard, but it's genuinely, it is very refreshing because it's just a different, it's the same game, the same mechanics, but it's a different premise of like, there is less building a broken board on turn one, there is less maneuvering through hand traps, there is less deciding games via non-engine, there's a lot more like engine versus engine, and a lot more I make a good board but not an unbreakable board that you can now play into with your engine. And at the same time, everything is a little bit lower power level as well, because the really powerful engines all have high points on them. So if you are playing a deck that, or if, and honestly, it is a place, even though he said like, okay, there's a lot of meta at these tournaments and people are really trying, still, in my experience, you can play pet decks way more effectively in Genesys format. You know, if you're going to a YCS, are you going to have the best chances of winning if you play, I don't know, your pet deck Necros or whatever, like, or if I play my pet Dragon Ruler deck, I'm still going to have a harder time than if I was playing Vanquish Soul, but the gap is not as big as it is in Advanced Constructed sometimes. Because the best decks in Advanced Constructed still get to play the best non-engine. So the best decks in Advanced Constructed are ahead on both fronts. Or at least they're ahead with the engine, but the non-engine is at least the same. And the rogue decks have basically don't even have the advantage of getting to play more non-engine that's powerful. In Genesys, you make up the gap a little bit of, you know, your deck is stronger than mine, so you don't get to play the powerful non-engine, but I do. Or I get to play Pot of Greed and you don't. So in some games, I just have more cards than you, and that will help. So I've just had nothing but positive experiences with Genesys so far, and I really don't want people to just view it as like, oh, this is like an alternative to Advanced Constructed whenever I don't enjoy Advanced Constructed. This is something that, like he said, I really can't put it any better, but if you love playing Yu-Gi-Oh!, if you ever have back and forth games in Advanced Constructed, and you think to yourself like, yeah, that was really fun. You can just have more of that in Genesys, and you can just play both formats at the same time. Which is gonna lead me to the other thing, which is like I was a little disappointed that, you know, they were happening simultaneously because I had to choose. I don't want to choose. I don't want to choose between Genesys and Advanced Construct because I think both are awesome. I would have loved to play in both YCSs, you know, which is why I was so excited when they announced that Genesys would get its own YCS last year. And now they decided to put them together, which I think is also good for other reasons because, you know, Genesys getting its own YCS, like, because this means there's going to be 4, 5, 6 Genesys YCSs per year in NA, and then I don't know how many YCSs you guys get, but we're going to have like 3 or 4, and that's good. That is good for Genesys format to have that much exposure, that much like opportunities to play. The format at a proper competitive level is going to be great for the format. But at the same time, for me, it means I'm always going to have to choose, and that's why one of the suggestions that came up during the last time we talked about this, I think, is they could just do day 1 for Genesys on Friday, because in Europe, I think it was Genesys on Saturday was 5 rounds, and then they did the remaining Swiss rounds and top 8 on Sunday. So if you're only doing 5 rounds on Saturday, why not do them on Friday? Why not do it on Friday? They have other public events on Friday. They have other stuff like the 3 versus 3 or whatever on Friday that you can play, and that's also 4 or 5 rounds or whatever. Like, why not do Genesys day 1 on Friday, main event day 1 on Saturday, and then on Sunday you have both day 2s? And so the only way you have to choose between Genesys and Advanced Constructed is if you make day 2 in both of them. Then sure, you have to decide. But realistically, I think that would be the best way to do it.
Final note, I did get to talk to some Konami executives about Genesys format, and they told me, bar none, the best thing that can be done for the health of the format is for people to use the hashtag Yu-Gi-Oh! Genesys and post lists they are playing or lists they are seeing from their locals. If you have an OTS that's hosting Genesys events, be the dickhead that gets those lists. If you are brewing, post them online. And please, please, please use the
because NA doesn't do side events on Fridays. I mean, yeah, sure, but Europe does, right? I'm talking from the European perspective at least, right? Like, I guess then if it's not possible in the US for some reason and they're never doing side events on Friday, then sure. But in Europe, we do have the opportunity. And we also have the space on the Friday, right? Because they're not needed. They don't need the entire venue for the main event on Friday yet. You know, there's an incredible amount of space on the Friday for this sort of thing. So you could even increase the cap from 256 to like 512. And then everyone gets to play day 1 for Genesys. And then on Sunday, if you make day 2 in Genesys and your day 1 in the main event doesn't work out, you can play that or the other way around and so on. I think it'd be awesome.
Hashtag Yu-Gi-Oh! Genesys when you do so. There will be more Genesys content on this channel. I'll be playing it at future events, and I hope to see you there as well.
All right. I thought this was a pretty wholesome look into the format. It's kind of what I expected after reading through the Twitter thread that he did. But I thought I still wanted to take a look at it because I think this is something I personally didn't experience as much of Genesys this last YCS because I played the Advanced Constructed main event and they took it away from the Friday, the Genesys qualifiers. So this was something that I was interested in how Genesys felt for the people. And even though I didn't participate in Genesys, I care about this format. I think it's awesome. And as a general fan of Yu-Gi-Oh, I can see myself, you know, I can see myself participating in Genesys format over the Advanced Constructed main event at some point if I just really love the format. But I honestly don't think it needs to be this sort of thing where you always compare. I think it's just something that you can really enjoy both. And I do that. I do enjoy both formats. So I care about Genesys as well. And I was really hoping that people had a good time playing it. And from what from everything I hear all the time is everyone I'm talking to who plays Genesys has an awesome time. 99% of people I talk to who play Genesys have a good time. And all the negative stuff I hear about Genesys is usually from people where I feel like they haven't given the format a proper chance. and haven't really participated actively in it, which I think is it's completely okay if you're not interested in Genesys. Or because you are so caught up with Advanced Constructed and you love Advanced Constructed so much, and that's enough for you and everything. Completely reasonable. You know, you don't want to spend more time than what you're spending already on Advanced Constructed, or if you want to spend more time with Yu-Gi-Oh, then you would rather put even more time into Advanced Constructed. All reasonable, okay? But I think a lot of the arguments that are brought up against Genesys, genuinely, from my perspective, are not correct and don't reflect my experience with the format. And I think the only reason people reach those conclusions is because they don't properly play the format. Like when people say like, oh, it's just the same decks as they are in Advanced Constructed, like even Draco Tail, okay? The Draco Tail, I can see the argument of like, okay, if I'm facing Draco Tail cards in Advanced Constructed, I don't want to face them in Genesys. Okay, sure, I get that. But realistically still, as someone who plays Yu-Gi-Oh at pretty much the highest level there is, Draco Tail in Genesys is not the same as Draco Tail in Advanced Constructed. Okay, the power level difference between those decks is insane. Okay, it's not the same. I understand if you don't want to see the same play style, I guess, between the two formats, but power level wise, it is night and day between Genesys and Advanced Constructed when you're talking Draco Tail. And also Vanquish Soul. The difference between Genesys Vanquish Soul and Advanced Constructed Vanquish Soul is night and day. They are not the same deck. But yeah. Okay. Guys, I'm noticing my voice is starting to go away from the weekend. I think we're going to call it a day a little bit early today. I'm still a little bit tired from the weekend and my voice is getting a little bit rough. I hope you enjoyed the little bit of a weekend report from the YCS. I hope you had a good time at the YCS or watching the YCS. Hope you enjoyed the little bit of a weekend recap and everything. Appreciate you all so much. And thank you for all the support. I'll be back tomorrow where we're going to have a regular stream. We still have to do the Dice Rally event in Master Duel because I really want the Ghost Bell mate. But yeah, I've got some fun things planned for the next couple of days, so don't worry, you'll get enough streams this week. But gonna call it a day a little bit earlier today. Hope you enjoyed the stream. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you guys tomorrow. Let me quickly find someone to raid real quick who's playing Yu-Gi-Oh right now. Hold up. Let me find some Master Duelists to raid. Who do we have? I'll send you to My Body is Reggie. They're watching a Draco Tail deck profile right now. All right, you guys have a good time there. I'll see you tomorrow, everybody. Thank you for watching. Thank you for all the support. And peace.